The red dragon shoots flames from its mouth. A man with long black hair holds a sword in his hand. With a confident look, he holds his hand on his belt and says that even if the dragon god had come here in person, he would still have died. Someone exclaims, "Jump." A guy with short black hair and a black t-shirt jumps and says that no respectable person will watch the prologue. It is best to quickly enter the game and take the initiative into your own hands. A notification appears with a system prompt asking whether the player wants to select a class. A guy in a black t-shirt falls down. He controls the system with his finger and says yes, and then adds that he was so busy pretending to be cool that he forgot about creating a character. A system notification appears where it says that the character's appearance is being customized, and then the system asks you to enter a name. Note, there is no renaming function, so you need to be careful when choosing. The protagonist falls into the smoke and chooses the name The Strongest Kindergartner. A system notification appears stating that the player's age analysis does not meet the criteria for selecting this name. The request is automatically rejected and therefore a new opinion must be selected. The main character clenched his teeth. He shouts the name Winter River and falls straight into the smoke. He hits the ground in the newcomer village. An old man in a dark cloak sees a huge explosion. The ground beneath the protagonist has become distorted and his clothing is now torn. There is a lot of smoke coming from it. The protagonist looks at the old man. An exclamatory look hangs over the old man. The protagonist thought that first he should take on the mission. He approaches the old man and puts his hand on the back of his head, and then asks him if he can help him with anything. The old man closes one class and tells the protagonist that he is not worthy. The main character, with an angry expression on his face, asks the old man who he is looking down on. The old man points his finger at the blue slugs and asks the protagonist if he thinks too highly of himself. He adds that everything is simple. You need to go to the entrance to the village and kill the slime to prove your strength to him. Outside the village there are many blue slugs. A system notification appears informing you that the Prove Your Strength mission has been accepted. The main character shouts, "Yes." A system notification appears with an introduction stating that the brave adventurer must kill the slime to prove his strength. The main character stands behind one of the slimes. He materializes a stick from his inventory and says that if he, Winter River, had not been born, this village would have remained forever without protection. The protagonist hits the slime with a stick and deals 5 damage to it. He asks if the starting damage in this game is really that low. The slime makes an angry expression on its face. She jumps on the protagonist and hits his stomach, causing the guy 50 points of damage. The slime jumped away from the protagonist. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's face and he says that it is impossible for the slime to have 10 times more damage. The main character runs away from the slime. He opens a system window with information about the character and asks what is happening. He notes that even the slime can't win. He has 1 level, 100 health, 2 strength, 1 defense, 0 reputation, 0 luck, and also has a discovery skill, which shows basic information about creatures and objects 5 levels above the character. The protagonist looks around and says that he got stuck on the slime for the first time after just entering the game and that other players are probably still watching the cutscenes and he still has enough time to figure out a way out before they arrive. He notices something. He looks at the guard of the beginner village and thought that it seems that they are only level 5 here. The protagonist approaches the guard and asks if he can ask a question, and the guard replies no. Drops of sweat are running down the protagonist's face and he thought how it happened that he behaves the same as the headman, and is it really that all the people in this village are not friendly to newcomers? The guard with a stern expression tells the protagonist that they, the adventurers, should first think about how to protect themselves from the slime, and then adds that he will tell him, but it will cost 10 gold coins. He tells the protagonist not to even think about asking him for help. The protagonist smiles and tells the guard to take a closer look, and then asks who else is there besides him. The protagonist raises his index finger up and says that there is 1 coin less. He adds that if the guard doesn't want her, he will find someone else. The guard thought that this was true. The elder had recently said that many adventurers would soon arrive here and new opportunities would appear. He wonders how it happened that after so long, only this guy ended up here. He thought that besides, he only earns 50 silver per month of work, and 100 silver equals 1 gold coin. And the protagonist probably doesn't know this. The guard tells the main character to wait. A drop of sweat runs down his face and he asks the main character what help he needs. The main character smiles maliciously, and his eyes glow with a golden light. The main character tells the guard that he wants advice from him, and the guard extends his hand and says that he will help with this. The protagonist is enveloped in a golden aura and a system notification appears, where it is written that the Cairo soldier from the beginner village taught the protagonist the basic level 0 sword skill. He also taught the protagonist basic double strike level C. A system notification appears with information about basic sword level. Introduction. Only by mastering the basics can you achieve perfection in the art of fencing. Effect, strength +5. Limitation. With a sword, 100% of the effect is achieved, with other weapons only 50%. Another system window appears where it says about the basic double strike. Introduction. This is a simple and straightforward 2-hit combo with no frills. Effect. Quickly deals 2 hits to an enemy based on attack power, dealing 75% damage the first time and 80% the second time. Cooldown lasts 20 seconds. The guard sighs. He tells the protagonist that he spent all his coins teaching him, so he needs to be paid. The main character closes his eyes and says that he has just arrived and he does not yet have the opportunity to move his things here. He adds that he can write him a receipt and pay as soon as he has the money. The guard clenches his hand into a fist and shouts, asking the main character if he really wanted to get hold of it for free. The main character says that no, he really got here without money in his pockets. The guard points his finger at the protagonist and shouts that they will sign a contract, and if he does not pay him 1 gold coin, then he will find the protagonist and he will not like it enough. A notification appears that the main character has signed a contract with the soldier Cairo from the newcomer village. The protagonist owes him 1 gold coin to repay his generosity, and if he breaks the contract, Cairo will hunt him and will not regret it. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, asks the guard to add 1 more coin in exchange for his equipment. The sun is shining in the sky behind the clouds. The main character in guard armor and with a sword on his belt says that he talked him out of it for so long, but in the end he persuaded him to give up the equipment. The protagonist opens the system window, wearing leather armor of a white level soldier, the defense of which is 2-2. Description: newbie village soldier uniform. He is also equipped with a white level soldier's iron sword, which has a strength of 3-3. Description: sword of a soldier from a beginner village. The protagonist imagines a pyramid where the equipment levels are listed from worst to best: white, bronze, silver, gold, dark gold, spirit, earth and heaven. The protagonist puts his finger to his chin and says that his equipment has a white level. Obviously weapons of this level are just garbage. And according to the description, on the Tianheng continent there are levels from low to high. According to the character information window, his strength has increased to 9-9, and his defense to 3-3. The protagonist says that now his characteristics have improved significantly, and it's time to show this slime its place. Lightning appears in the sky. Blue clots of energy appear near the protagonist. There are many players appearing in the newcomer village. One of the players says that everything is so realistic, and then asks if this is really eternity. One of the players shouts that some hooligan touched him. Another player shouts that everything is packed here. Drops of sweat are running down the protagonist's face, and he thought that there are a lot of players here, and it turns out that after watching the story scene at the beginning and entering the game normally, everything looks like this. The main character runs away and thought that he should quickly take advantage of this chance. He came to the blue slime with a sword in his hand. He shouts that he will now strike a double strike with this sword. It hits the blue goo and deals 28 damage to it twice. He shouts that the damage has increased significantly, and the blue slime clenched its teeth in anger. She jumps on the protagonist and hits him, dealing 12 damage. The protagonist smiles and says that the defense has also increased. He kills the slime by hitting it with a punch that deals 66 damage. A system notification appears congratulating you on killing the blue slime, for which the protagonist receives 10 experience points. The main character smiles smugly. He looks at his hand and thought it was amazing, because he was really able to deal 66 points of critical damage and in just a few seconds. He adds that it is so nice to have the skills and equipment. The protagonist hits another of the slugs. The protagonist is enveloped in a golden aura and golden waves emanate from him. The system congratulates the main character on reaching level 2, due to which his strength and defense are increased by 1, and his health is increased by 100. The sun appears in the sky. The protagonist thought that the efficiency of killing slugs had increased and he could continue. 2 hours later, a player with red hair shouts that the slime is so difficult to defeat even in a team of 4-5 people. A man with short black hair says they are doomed. A guy with red hair says that they won't even get out of this village. An old man with glowing red eyes watches them and thought that these adventurers were good for nothing. Winter River, Level 3. The protagonist with a smug expression on his face holds a bag in his hand and says that he has proven his strength. He throws the bag on the floor in front of the old man. A few slug kernels spilled out of the bag. The old man says that there will still be a couple of adventurers left who have enough brains for this. The system congratulates the protagonist on completing the Prove Your Strength mission and informs you that 20 experience has been gained. The main character looks at his hand and thought that this old man was bullying others too much. He says that this mission is too easy and then asks the old man if there is anything else. The old man points his finger at the protagonist and says that he wants him to defeat 10 demonic gods. A system notification appears with the task hunting the demonic gods. Description: the Tianheng continent is divided into light and dark factions. The strongest beings of the dark faction are called the 10 demonic gods. The protagonist must defeat them and gain incredible fame, thanks to which he will be revered as a hero. Reward: level 1 city lord, countless equipment, gold, and old man's family heirloom. Duration: 1 week. Penalty for failure: the light faction's reputation will drop by 10,000, level by 50, and as a penalty you will have to send the old man 10,000 gold coins. The protagonist with a frightened expression on his face and screaming asks the old man if he is really trying to scam him out of 10,000 gold coins, because the last mission was to kill a slug and now he really wants him to kill a demon in just a week. The old man asks the protagonist if he really doesn't dare. He adds that he thought that the main character was smarter than this garbage around, but apparently he was wrong. The protagonist remains silent after the old man's words. The main character with a smile on his face says that he will now do the quest. Winter River, level 3. The main character approaches the old man and says that he will take this task, but the consequences after his failure are too severe. He must give him his family heirloom in advance. The old man with a smile on his face says that it's dealt with. This is what was expected from a savvy and strong hero. He hands the protagonist a scroll. The old man gritted his teeth and thought that the protagonist was stupid, because not only would 100,000 lost reputation points prompt all the light factions to hunt him, but also 10,000 gold coins would make him filthy rich. The protagonist takes the scroll and receives a notification that he has successfully accepted the task hunting the demonic gods with a time limit of 1 week. A description of a scroll appears, which is called Wrath of God and is an S-level item. Description: unfold the scroll and release a low-level Forbidden Fire attribute spell. Effect: creates an AoE with a radius of 200 meters and deals 5 million fixed damage to all enemies. The moon rises in the dark sky. The wolf runs towards the protagonist and growls loudly. A system window appears with information about the Grey Wolf, a common monster. His level is 5, HP is 1000, strength is 15-20, defense is 9, and he also has the bite skill. The wolf bites the protagonist and deals 103 damage. The protagonist makes a slashing blow to the wolf and deals 110 damage to it. He performs a downward strike on the wolf. A notification appears with information about defeating the wolf and gaining 80 experience points. The defeated wolf lies under the protagonist. The main character reached level 4. His strength and defense increased by 1, and his health by 100 units. He reaches for the coins on the floor and says that they are only 3 bronze coins. He picks up the coins and says that he could not have imagined that the family heirloom would be a disposable scroll. It is not surprising that the old man easily parted with it. The speed at which he was leveling up would not allow him to kill the demon god, so he thought that maybe he should give up this account. A system notification appears stating that since the respected player has entered into a contract for 10,002 gold coins in the game, if he decides to quit his account, he will have to compensate it with real currency. The current rate is $600 for 1 gold coin. The protagonist, with a shocked expression on his face, shouts that he will need to pay $59 million, and being a graduate, the best he can find is a job for 8,000. He wonders how long it will take to pay 59 million. The round moon illuminates the field. The protagonist stands in front of many wolves. He says with concern on his face that it is only 10,000 gold coins. There is no reason to panic. He runs away and thought he would just keep a low profile and swing. The protagonist looks out from behind the grass and sees a wolf with purple eyes who has strayed from the pack. He makes a dash towards him. He hits the wolf, and it howls loudly after the hit. The main character laughs with a smile on his face and then says that no matter how loud he fights, another wolf will not come to save him. 2 hours later, golden particles fly through the air. Behind the protagonist lie many defeated wolves. He breathes heavily and says that he has reached level 7, and then adds that he is lucky that at least the equipment fell out. A system window appears with information about the protagonist. Level is 7. HP is 700, Strength is 32-34, Defense is 13-15, and Reputation and Luck are 0. The protagonist puts on wolf skin bracers, which give 2 protection. He sees a werewolf in front of him. The werewolf with red eyes growls. A window appears with information about it. This is the demonic Wolf King, a bronze level boss. It has the following characteristics: level 12, HP 25,000, Strength 35-40, Defense 25. Skills: Bloodlust, Wolf King Aura, Rending Claw. Description: he used to be an ordinary grey wolf until he was lucky enough to cross paths with a fugitive Necromancer, who turned him into a cruel and powerful king of demonic wolves using forbidden magic. As a result, he became the Necromancer's watchdog, which protects him from strangers. The main character, with a worried look on his face, notes that the boss has 25,000 health units, and then says that his attack is enough to break through his defense, but perhaps it would be safer to attack at a higher level. He made a serious expression on his face. The protagonist thought that if he wants to get out of this situation, then he should take a more difficult path, and he should take this chance while there are no other players around. The main character runs towards the werewolf with a sword at the ready. The Wolf King notices the main character. He jumps at him and swings his clawed hand. The protagonist dodges the enemy's attack and strikes the wolf. The Wolf King makes another strike and hits the protagonist, dealing 219 damage. The main character stands in front of the wolf and receives a notification that he has dealt 9 damage to the demonic wolf. Blood runs down the Wolf King's hand. The protagonist thought what this crazy difference in damage was. The Wolf King runs towards the protagonist. One ordinary wolf appears behind the main character. The wolf bites the protagonist's hand and deals 78 damage. The protagonist gritted his teeth in pain. He grabs the wolf by the neck. He holds it in front of him and a notification appears that the warrior holding the wolf is Winter River. The Wolf King has a surprised expression on his face. He reaches out with his hand towards the wolf that the protagonist is holding. The main character with a malicious smile on his face says that it is expected that he will not attack his own. He uses a basic double strike several times, hitting the Wolf King for 7, 9, 8 and 7 damage. The Wolf King clenched his sharp teeth. He makes an attack with his clawed hand. The protagonist, with a satisfied expression on his face, asks the boss to come to him. He makes another attack on his enemy. 2 hours later, the Wolf King is enveloped in a blue aura. The blue aura is replaced by streams of red energy. The Wolf King has 12,510 health units left out of 25,000. The protagonist clenched his teeth and said that the next phase had really begun. A notification appears that the phases are a random number generator installed by the staff of the game Eternity into monsters. It doesn't matter whether it's a normal monster or not. Everyone has a chance to advance to a higher phase and become stronger. They can even switch to 3 phases, and the likelihood of a monster leader changing phases is much higher than that of a normal one. The red energy enveloping the boss becomes even stronger. A system notification appears that the Demon Wolf King has used the Bloodlust skill, causing his strength to increase by 15%, his speed to increase by 20%, and he will lose 0.2% of his health every minute. The protagonist asks if it is some kind of joke that the boss will lose 0.2% of his health every minute. He adds that it looks like the process of killing the boss will be tougher than he imagined. A notification appears that the Demon Wolf King has used the skill Wolf King Aura, which reduces attack speed by 10%, movement speed by 10%, and lasts 30 seconds. The Wolf King pushes off the ground. He jumps on the protagonist and hits him with his claws, thanks to which he inflicts 1487 health points on the wolf. The protagonist has a frightened expression on his face. He receives a notification that the Demon Wolf King used the Rending Claw skill, dealing 250% damage to the Grey Wolf, but this made him deeply sad and he will not be able to move for 5 seconds. The boss has a frustrated expression on his face. The main character asks whether there really are such productions here. The protagonist hits the boss while the boss's negative effect is counting down. The Wolf King roars loudly. He hits the protagonist and inflicts 310 health on him. The main character, with concern on his face, shouts that the boss is fierce and notes that if he receives another blow, his health will end. The Winter River character's health is 91 out of 700 units. The protagonist thought that he could not defeat him and wondered if he could catch up with him, after which he tried to run away. The Wolf King jumps on the protagonist. He attacks him, but the main character dodges. The protagonist stands in front of the enemy and says that he was lucky that he moved illogically, and then wonders if he can defeat him in a battle of wear and tear. The Wolf King makes several more attacks, and the protagonist jumped back and thought that if he had moved incorrectly, then with his current level of health he would have been killed in that very second if he had touched him. The protagonist uses the basic sword skill. 5 hours later, the boss has almost no health left, and the protagonist makes a cutting blow to him. A notification appears congratulating the protagonist for killing the bronze level boss Demon Wolf, thanks to which he receives 2,000 experience points and 500 reputation. The protagonist is enveloped in a golden aura and says that he has finally depleted his HP. He reaches character level 10. The system informs that the protagonist became the first person to kill a bronze level boss in the game, and for this receives a reward in the form of 10 attribute points of his choice, as well as plus 1,000 reputation and a rare item. The system asks the protagonist if he wants to announce the results of his battle to all adventurers on the Tianheng continent. Note: after the announcement, the protagonist will receive 10,000 reputation points. The main character, with a satisfied expression on his face, agrees. A system notification appears congratulating the Winter River player from the eastern region for killing a bronze level boss for the first time. Players fight blue slugs using sticks. One of them shouts, "Did the first boss kill happen so quickly?" Another player shouts that he hasn't even made it out of the newcomer's village yet. The protagonist receives many requests to be added to his friend list. The protagonist asks the system to block all friend requests so that no one can send them. The main character sighs. With a smile on his face, he says that it's time to look at the loot after the first kill of the boss and approaches the Wolf King lying on the ground. Someone asks who killed his carefully placed puppet. The protagonist has a frightened expression on his face. A man with long white hair wearing green armor appears next to him. A system notification appears saying that this is a Necromancer with 3 question marks. A white-haired man with a glowing blue eye and an arrogant look says that he was a non-entity, and then asks the protagonist to die and calls him an insect. The Necromancer is enveloped in a blue aura. The protagonist thought that this was really the same Necromancer mentioned in the description of the Wolf King. He adds that it looks like a more impressive boss has arrived. He smiles and thinks that he still has an ace up his sleeve. The Necromancer puts his staff forward and says that he, along with the other strongest dark gold level of the Tianheng continent, is only 1 step away from the spiritual level. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, says that the appearance of a dark gold level individual in a small beginner village is terrifying. The Necromancer asks the protagonist if he really thinks that he can be reborn endlessly, and that he shouldn't be afraid of death just because there is a goddess who protects this life. He calls the protagonist a stupid adventurer, and then thinks that even though he is badly injured and is not in the best state of strength to kill the adventurer, it should be enough for him. The main character sighs and says that as expected from a person from the dark gold level, he even knows this. He adds that before he dies, he has one request and he hopes that the Necromancer can fulfill it, being a person from the dark gold level. There is a bright moon in the sky. The Necromancer, with an arrogant expression on his face, asks the protagonist what his request is. The main character asks the Necromancer if he can let him look at his information page, and then says that this is his last request. He thought it would be great if the Necromancer's health was less than 5 million. The Necromancer asks the protagonist if he really wants this. He thought that now he was in too bad a state and should not be allowed to look in there and see all the information. The Necromancer raises a staff with a skull above him and blue waves of energy emanate from it. He shouts to the protagonist that he wants too much for an insignificant ant. He points his staff at the protagonist, and the main character asks the Necromancer if he thinks he's going too far with such and such an excuse. The protagonist puts the scroll forward and shouts that it's not too late to stop. A drop of sweat runs down the Necromancer's face, and he asks if this is a forbidden scroll of curses. He thought who would have thought that a beginner would have such equipment. The protagonist, with a smug smile, tells the Necromancer that if he does not want to die, then he needs to let him look at his information page and give him all the treasures. The scroll is enveloped in golden energy. The Necromancer tells the protagonist not to even think that he was afraid of his scroll, because he has more health than the curse can inflict. With a nervous smile on his face, the Necromancer asks the protagonist if he really wants to take advantage of his misfortune, and then asks him to guess how much health he actually has. He invites the protagonist to take a chance and tear up the scroll, and then asks him if he really thinks that he, Daniel, is afraid of using a disposable curse scroll. The protagonist opens the scroll and with a smile on his face asks if he should tear it then, and then says that in the end he will be resurrected because he is an adventurer. The scroll is a little torn. Drops of sweat are running down the Necromancer's face, and he thought that if he were at the peak of his best state, he would definitely not be afraid of such a minor curse. But now he may not be able to endure such damage. The Necromancer shouts to the protagonist to stop. Leaves fly near the tree crowns. The Necromancer asks the protagonist what he is trying to achieve. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, tells the Necromancer that if he gives him enough equipment and loot, he will leave. Drops of sweat are running down the main character's face, and he thought that this NPC was too smart. Danielle silently looks at the protagonist. The Necromancer says that he cannot give the adventurer equipment or loot without something in return. The main character asks why, and the Necromancer replies that it is because of the rules of this world. The protagonist, with concern on his face, asks what he should do in his opinion and thought that hearing information about the rules of the world from NPCs was too strange. The Necromancer asks the protagonist how about going against the grain and accepting the protagonist as an apprentice and teaching him the sword skills of the Dark Faction. A system window appears with an offer from the Necromancer Danielle to join the Dark Faction. Note, if the protagonist agrees, the reputation of the Light Faction will drop by -100,000, but the reputation system of the Dark Faction will become open. There is also an offer to become an apprentice to the Necromancer Danielle. Note, if the protagonist agrees, it will be considered a betrayal for the Light Faction. The protagonist, with surprise on his face, thought that he was really being invited to the Dark Faction. With a smile on his face, he tells the Necromancer that he is interesting, and as soon as he chooses to join the Dark Faction, he will have nowhere to go. He will become the same ant on a string like him. He adds that the warrior is also a well-balanced class with 3 stars across the board. He asks why he lost the skills of the Dark Sword from the Necromancer. Information appears about the characteristics of the protagonist where HP, Strength, Defense, and Speed are equal to 3 stars, and his class is Warrior. Danielle shows 3 fingers and tells the protagonist to relax because he swears in the name of the god of contracts that if he becomes his student, he will put all his efforts into training and allow him to change his role to a one-of-a-kind hidden one, the Dark Swordsman. A system notification appears with information that the Necromancer Danielle has sworn that he will make every effort to make the protagonist a talented student, and if he breaks his word, he will be killed by the god of contracts. A system window appears with information about the role of the Dark Swordsman. Health, Strength, Defense, and Speed are equal to 5 stars. Description: this is the most powerful mythical level creature among the undead spirits. There are many references in history to encounters on Earth with Dark Swordsmen. Legends say that they have an evil force hidden within them. They are cruel, very strong, and ruthless, and also have unrivaled hidden talent. The protagonist, with a surprised expression on his face, compares the warrior to a Dark Swordsman, and then thought that this is a hidden role where there are as many as 5 stars. He adds that the stars determine the amount by which the stat will be increased with each level, and each unit gives 10 points of damage. The protagonist imagines himself in armor with spiked shoulder pads and calls himself cold-blooded, cruel, strong, merciless, and unusually beautiful. He and the Necromancer shake hands and the protagonist says that he agrees, and then calls the Necromancer a teacher. The Necromancer replies that the deal is completed. A purple notification appears, where it says that the protagonist has joined the Dark Faction and the reputation system of the Dark Faction has been opened, and the reputation points from the Light Faction are permanently set to -100,000. The main character's skin turns black and is covered with purple lines. The system congratulates the protagonist for changing his role, and informs him that his base height and features have changed. The protagonist's fingernails become sharp. Dark streams of energy emanate from the protagonist. The system congratulates the main character for changing his role to a Dark Swordsman, thanks to which the abilities in his body are activated. The basic sword skill has increased in level and has been changed to the Dark Sword skill. The basic double strike leveled up to Insanity Kill. A system notification appears, which says congratulations on completing the role change and becoming the first player to change the role in the game, and also provides information about receiving an additional reward in the form of 10 stat points, 1,000 reputation, as well as rare equipment, the Ring of the Spirits of the Dead. The protagonist looks at his hand. He raises his index finger up and asks the teacher if he can turn back. The Necromancer tells the protagonist not to worry, as this is the result of his body being filled with an evil aura. He adds that when the protagonist becomes strong enough, he will be able to control the evil aura and return to his original form. He points his staff at the protagonist and tells him that he will help hide his true nature. A system notification appears, where it is written that the Necromancer Daniel used concealment magic on the protagonist and he was able to acquire a human form, which will last 3 days. The protagonist is enveloped in a blue aura. The Necromancer asks what happened. The protagonist says that he has already changed his role to become the only hidden role, but his teacher is only a dark gold level Necromancer. He adds that his future is not bright and imagines a hierarchy where the dark gold level is in 4th place. The Necromancer is silent with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Daniel tells the main character that he is quite ambitious, but he can relax, because all the power is in the king of the faction, and if one day he becomes stronger than him, then there is a chance that he will become a disciple of one of the 10 great demonic gods. The protagonist with a joyful expression on his face says that he understood everything. The Necromancer calls the protagonist by nickname and tells him that he, as his teacher, is obliged to allow him to take the test for anyone who changes roles. He adds that he needs to go and prove his loyalty to the dark faction. A system notification appears stating that the main character has been forced to accept the mission A Heart Thirsting for Darkness on difficulty of being a traitor to the light faction. The dark faction wants them to prove their loyalty. Mission requirements: kill 100 light faction adventurers or original inhabitants. Mission reward: approval of the dark faction. The protagonist looks at the Necromancer and asks if killing 100 adventurers would be too difficult. Daniel tells the protagonist that he is the only one of all the Necromancer's students who changed his role to become a dark swordsman, so he should not underestimate his talent. The Necromancer raises his hand in farewell and tells Winter River to take the test and prove that his heart longs for darkness. He reports that he is seriously injured and will need 3 days to recover, and he hopes that during this time the main character will have already completed his mission so that he can take him with him and leave this newcomer village. The protagonist asks the teacher what will happen if he dies and whether he can now be resurrected at the resurrection point of the newcomer village, when he joined the dark faction. A Necromancer with a grim expression asks the protagonist how he can ask for protection from the goddess of life when he has already joined the dark faction. The main character, with a frightened expression on his face, asks if he really won't be able to come to life. Daniel replies that of course, but having lost the protection of the goddess of life, he received in return the protection of an ancient demonic god. The protagonist asks what this means. The Necromancer moves away and tells the protagonist that he will find out as soon as he completes the mission to change the straits. He tells the protagonist that he hopes that over time his achievements will more than eclipse his own. The protagonist says goodbye to the teacher and raises his hand. The main character with a small smile on his face says that he managed to change his role and become a one-of-a-kind hidden role just like that. And besides, he got equipment and improved his skills. A purple system window appears, where it is written that the skill Dark Swordsmanship of rank B is a unique skill of the Dark Swordsman. Effect: Strength plus 50. Other effects: Attack speed plus 20%. Limitations: used only with sword-type weapons, with which another 100% effectiveness will be obtained. Effect: only works 50% with other weapons. The protagonist puts on a silver level ring of the dead spirits. Effect: Strength plus 5%. Required level 10. Description: a ring created by a Necromancer with special care. The protagonist, sword in hand, looks at the 2 wolves and says that he is still missing several equipment slots, so he will have to use them to test his new skills. He hits the wolf and a black and purple wave of energy emanates from him. The main character finds a wolf skin helmet and puts it on himself. With a smile on his face, he says that he is lucky because the slots for equipment are filled and there are still a couple of extra ones left. He adds that when the time comes, he will sell them in the village. The protagonist's inventory includes bracers, a breastplate, a dagger, and pants. The red-haired guy pushes the protagonist away by holding his face and shouts at him to go away. Several players attack the wolf. The guy with bandages on his hands says that the community of heroes has taken this place, and if he wants to grind, then he needs to go somewhere else, and there is no need to go to them. The protagonist asks the man what right he has to say that, since he came here first. He adds that if they decided to take this place as a group, then what should they, solo players, do? A man with black hair points a sword at the protagonist and shouts that they don't care because they took this place. The protagonist rises from the ground and says that loners will not just sit and watch their chaos. He adds that if no one is willing to take the first step and answer them, then he will be the first. The main character smiles and tells the players who think that he is right, let them subscribe to him and leave a comment so that he can see their support. A system window appears, where it says that the recording function is activated. Through the camera lens you can see 2 men running towards the protagonist. The black-haired guy shouts that this is bad, because he started the recording and therefore he needs to be dealt with quickly. A man with bandages on his hands shouts to the protagonist that he will give him a like now with a kick. Two guys hit the protagonist with swords and inflict 1 unit of damage on him. The smiling protagonist says that there is a saying, if he doesn't go down to hell, then who will? The protagonist combines a sword swing and deals 1487 units of damage to one player, and 1369 units of damage to another. A red system notification appears with the information that he killed the adventurer world in chaos and received 35 experience points, and also killed the adventurer dragon rider Yin Jeeping and received 27 experience points. The protagonist opens his eyes wide in surprise. He thought that after changing his role, his characteristics were simply incredible and ordinary players could be defeated simply in an instant. A system window appears with information about the protagonist, according to which he is level 10 and has the following characteristics. HP is 5250, Strength is 163-165, Defense is 69-72, Dark Faction Reputation is 1000, and his luck is 0. The main character looks on his hand and with a smile on his face, he shouts that after joining the Dark Faction, he can gain experience for killing players. Players nearby pay attention to the protagonist. Several players run towards the protagonist. One of them shouts that the brother of Chaos was killed. The other shouts that you need to get ready and take it. The protagonist smiles smugly and his eyes glow purple. He tells the players that in his eyes they are all just experience. The Winter River hits the players and they are hit by a dark purple wave. The main character jumps on one of the players and swings his sword. He makes a downward strike on the player. The guy crumbles into particles and opposite the main character there is only one enemy left. The guy with blonde hair has a frightened expression on his face and cannot say a word. The protagonist asks him what it is. A system notification appears informing you that the protagonist has killed 17 out of 100 people to complete a mission to kill 100 adventurers from the Light Faction. The protagonist makes a sword attack while dashing and deals 1541 damage to the blonde, and when he is behind him, asks if he is cute. Winter River, with a displeased expression on his face, tells the United Heroes not to blame him, because they were the ones who provoked him first. He receives a notification that the recording has been saved. There is a full moon in the sky. The protagonist looks at the people standing near the temple and thought that he needed to sell the accumulated equipment. He shouts that he sells equipment and only accepts cash, and then asks if anyone wants to buy equipment from the Grey Wolves. The guy with short black hair says that this is the Winter River from the announcement of the first murder. The guy in brown clothes says that even slime can't kill yet, but here they are already selling equipment from wolves. The white-haired guy says that although this is low-level equipment, the game has just begun, so even it is very valuable. A guy in brown clothes raises his finger up and shouts that he pays 500 apiece. A man with short black hair shouts that he is offering 1,000 coins for one piece. The main character raises 2 fingers up and exclaims that the highest bid wins. The guy with the shoulder pad on his right shoulder exclaims that he pays 10,000 and takes everything he has, and then asks the protagonist if he wants to join them. The protagonist receives a notification that the player the dragon soaring 10,000 miles asks to be accepted as a friend. The protagonist apologizes and says that he wishes to remain a solo player for now, and then wonders whether joining the Dark Faction would be a reckless move for him, a member of the Dark Faction. The guy with the shoulder pad says that then they can at least just add each other as friends, and if he has good equipment, he can sell it to them, to the Dragon Guild, and they will offer a good price. He sees the protagonist's nickname in the system window and asks him if it is he Winter River. The protagonist, with concern on his face, tells the guy that he will contact him if there is more good equipment for sale, but it would be better for him not to deceive him. A notification appears that the protagonist has added the player dragon soaring 10,000 miles as a friend. An exchange window appears where the protagonist sells bracers, a breastplate, a dagger, and pants. The guy from the guild laughs with a smile on his face and says that of course they won't deceive him, and then asks him to send him his bank account number. Clouds float in the sky above the city. The main character grabs the virtual reality helmet with his hands. He takes it off and sighs. He takes the phone and says that he withdrew cash for the equipment he sold, about 40,000. With a smile on his face, he takes the computer mouse and says that now he needs to upload a video with that group, and then adds that he will call it Little Bunch of Heroes and laughs. The protagonist uploaded the video to the site. The number of views, likes, reposts, and comments on the video is rapidly growing. A commentator with the nickname You Started First asks if this is the same Winter River who was the first to kill the bronze boss, and then adds that it was as if they were fighting against an iron wall. I'm 50 writes that it was tough. Momo writes that this bunch of heroes has been annoying him for a long time, and the protagonist is really formidable. Eastwind writes that he is curious, because for the first time he sees that they, the Association of Heroes, are treated this way, and then threatens the protagonist. Falling Demand writes to the fourth commentator so that he does not complain. The black-haired man calls the gray-haired man president, and then asks what he will do. He adds that this Winter River still bullies them in discussions. The black-haired guy is about to say what he says, but the president interrupts him. The gray-haired man asks his subordinate what else he said. The black-haired man says that he asked them not to let him get away with it. The president, with an angry expression on his face, shouts and asks how a lone wolf can fight against the unification of heroes. He smiles maliciously and asks who cares how talented he is and isn't he just one person. He asks to call all the players from the Hero Association to this newcomer village and encourage other players to join them while they are there. The gray-haired man shouts that whoever kills Winter River once will receive 50,000 gold, and then adds that not just once, but for as many times as they can pay. The black-haired man asks the president if they are making a big deal out of a mountain. The president tells the guy that he doesn't understand, because in the game Eternity, as in business, there are many opportunities, so there is no need to be afraid to spend money, and the more, the better. He adds that as long as the fame spreads, they have nothing to lose. The subordinate asks how many people they should gather and whether 20 is enough. Sunlight illuminates half of the office. The president, with a malicious smile, says that at least 100 people are needed, because the Winter River is only a step on the path of his unification of heroes to glory. Many armed players are looking at the protagonist. One of them shouts that they found him. The Winter River is here. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, says that there are so many people here, so much experience. He takes his sword out of its sheath and asks the players if they have all come to cause him trouble. Players run towards the protagonist. One of them shouts that they need to get ready, because 50,000 gold pieces are waiting for them. The main character, with a smug smile on his face, tells the players what they will now get from him. The players shout that they want to kill the protagonist. A black and purple wave of energy is sent towards the players. The main character smiles maliciously. Players are pushed back by a destructive wave of energy that appears due to the fact that the protagonist swung his sword. A system notification appears that the protagonist has killed the adventurers Smooth Lights of June and entering the widow's village at night and receives 11 and 20 experience points for this. The black-haired guy with concern on his face shouts that this is some kind of perversion, and it's not surprising that the Assembly of Heroes offers such a high reward. The blonde guy says that of course they can be revived, but their level is falling. He adds that they just started playing and he doesn't want to lower the level. A player with the nickname Creating Chaos in the World shouts to the other players not to panic, because today their brothers who died today will receive compensation for their deaths. He adds that they need to stop panicking and they have 100 more brothers behind them, so they have a numerical advantage and will starve him to death until he dies. He says that the protagonist has a really high level and has killed many people, and then adds that he probably has accumulated a huge level of evil and after death he will drop a lot of equipment. The main character smiles and asks the players if they really want to get his equipment and wonders if killing will increase his level of evil. He adds that he apologizes wildly and does not know whether his level of evil is increasing, but his experience scale is almost full. The protagonist laughs and says to attack him one by one. A man with a sword and shield almost approached the protagonist. The main character thought that the game had just begun and some people were only at level 2, having difficulty coping with the slugs, and now they still wanted to surround him. He adds that there is not a single person among them who would change their role to archer, mage, or any other long-range player to provide support. The guy with the shield points his sword directly at the protagonist. The main character hits the enemy with a shield and sword, causing him to drop his weapon. Winter River smiles wickedly as his eyes glow purple. He takes several shots at the players attacking him. A drop of sweat runs down the blonde's cheek and he calls the protagonist a psycho. Two players simultaneously attack the protagonist. One of them attacks from the front and the other from behind. They deal 2 and 1 damage respectively. The main character smiles and asks if this is all. 20 minutes later, the gray-haired man with long bangs points a sword at the protagonist and shouts that he does not have many health units left. The blonde man with the spear shouts that he is almost dead. One of the players shouts that no matter how great his tanking ability is, he will not be able to withstand hundreds of attackers at the same time. The protagonist is enveloped in powerful golden energy and now has full health. A notification appears about promotion to level 11. The players have shocked expressions on their faces. The brown-haired guy wonders if they don't understand something and how it happened that the main character can level up by killing other players. The president shouts that there is no need to panic, because the protagonist must have increased his level using the rewards that the system gave him for killing the first one. He adds that they still have more than 100 people and they have a good chance of killing him. The players run towards the protagonist again. One of them shouts that this guy must have used some rare means of leveling up. Another player shouts for everyone to gather and adds that he wants to see how he will defend himself against them when they use his own equipment against him. The main character, with a smile on his face, asks the hostile players if they are still going to attack, and then tells them that they are good at coming up with explanations for everything. The main character hits one of the players with a black-violet wave of energy and shouts that the problem is less. It deals 1541 damage to the player. A system notification appears stating that the protagonist has killed 74 out of 100 adventurers. 15 minutes later, the protagonist performs a piercing strike on one of the players and deals 1842 points of damage to him. A red system window appears, according to which the protagonist has completed the mission A Heart Thirsty for Darkness and receives recognition in the faction of Darkness. The main character puts his sword forward and exclaims with a smile on his face that he has finally completed his mission. He points his sword towards several other players and says that although he has already completed the mission, he cannot miss a great chance to gain extra experience. The gray-haired man shouts to the brothers not to retreat, because victory is right in front of them. The main character makes a cutting blow to several enemy players at once. The president looks at the main character and thought that they, the Alliance of Heroes, had summoned more than 200 people, not counting those who had already come running back after the resurrection. He wonders why this guy is still so fast, and then adds that it's like seeing a ghost while still alive. 5 minutes later, the players surround the protagonist. One of them shouts that the main character is almost dead and he is finally almost dead. Another player shouts that they need to get ready to fight for equipment. Black and purple streams of energy emanate from the protagonist's sword and he asks if they are really going to kill him. The protagonist emits golden energy and his health is fully restored as he has leveled up to 12. The protagonist with a crazy smile tells the players to work harder as his equipment is almost worn out. The president gritted his teeth and wondered why everything turned out the way it did. A guy with brown hair asks how the protagonist leveled up again. The bald man in armor asks since when can a player gain experience from killing others. Winter River smiles maliciously and asks the players if they really prefer to be cowards while the entire internet is looking at them and if they are not ashamed. Beads of sweat run down the president's face and he wonders if the reward for killing the bronze boss for the first time is really that good. The guy with red hair looks at the president and, addressing him as brother creating chaos in the world, asks what they will do. The protagonist walks towards them. The president gritted his teeth and commanded a retreat. Players run away from the protagonist. The main character raises a spear above himself and asks the players if they really want his equipment, and then adds that it turns out that he will have the last laugh. The protagonist with a smile on his face says that who would have thought that everything would go so smoothly. He adds that he leveled up twice. Killing these low-level players will no longer give him much experience. The main character opens the system window and sees that his evil level is 0, and then says that his evil level is still 0 and it seems that killing someone from another faction does not add evil. A red window with an exclamation mark appears. He opens a notification that says that the protagonist's teacher is now in a desperate situation and will most likely die. So you need to offer him help as soon as possible, because due to the death of the teacher, the reputation in the faction will decrease by 50,000 units. Drops of sweat run down the protagonist's face and he asks how it happened that he only recently helped him move to the dark faction and is already dying. Winter River runs into the gorge and exclaims that he hasn't even left the newcomer's village yet, and then asks how he can leave here if he dies. He runs among the smoke and covers his face with his hand. The man with the spear tells the Necromancer Daniel that he must admit defeat. The old man smiles maliciously and thought that for the Necromancer he could get a big reward in the Light faction, and if he killed him, he could get a chance to enter the church for further training. The old man points his spear at the Necromancer and says that he spent several months tracking him down and finally found him here. The Necromancer smiles evilly and tells the old man that he already has one foot in the grave and he shouldn't be so confident of victory. He adds that the old man should not hope to scare him by the fact that he is a higher rank. The old man and the Necromancer look away. The protagonist runs out of the bushes with a sword at the ready. The old man, with surprise on his face, asks the main character if it is really him. Winter River asks the old man how he ended up here. The inscription Pyromancer appears above the old man. With a gloomy expression on his face, he tells the protagonist to leave this place. The main character wonders who this old man is, because everything except his name is marked with question marks, like Danielle. The old man opens his eyes wide in surprise and shouts that the protagonist has an evil aura, and then asks him if he has really gone over to the side of evil. The main character, who is enveloped in black and purple energy, exclaims with a smile on his face that he is a good and law-abiding person. The Pyromancer smiles and thought that the protagonist is a devil's spawn, and if he kills the Necromancer and drags this brat to the Church of the Light faction, he will definitely receive many rewards from the followers of the church. The main character asks Danielle if he can win. The Necromancer, with concern on his face, says that until the main character came, he had a small chance of winning, but now he will definitely lose. The main character, with an alarmed expression on his face, asks what they will do then. The Necromancer replies that now they can only do one thing. He adds that he can secretly open a teleportation gate for them to escape, but first it must be blocked for at least 20 seconds. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek. He tells the Necromancer that he is an unscrupulous teacher because he allowed his student to use a precious object that he kept secret for the sake of escape. He puts his hand forward and tells the Necromancer to give him something, and the Necromancer asks what it is about. The protagonist says that he needs a mission, because how can he help him without a mission and a reward for helping him? Danielle, with a dissatisfied expression on her face, asks the protagonist how he dares to shamelessly call him a conscientious teacher. A notification appears that the Necromancer Danielle hopes that the protagonist will accept the block the Necromancer mission of difficulty. Danielle needs 20 seconds to prepare a one-time teleportation spell, so the protagonist must block the Pyromancer Brandy. The Necromancer vows to give generous rewards later. The main character, with a smile on his face, stands in front of the Necromancer and calls him an unreliable teacher, and then asks him to rely on him. Brandy, with an angry expression on his face, screams and asks the protagonist if he really doesn't take him seriously, and how dare they conspire so loudly right in front of him. Winter River puts forward her hand with a scroll and shouts to the old man not to move, because otherwise he will not be so polite. Golden energy emanates from the symbol of the sun on the old man's spear, and he screams and asks the protagonist if he knows who gave him this thing, what he is holding, and does he really think that he can withstand it with the help of a forbidden curse. Brandy thought that he shouldn't have given him the scroll in the first place. The protagonist reveals the scroll, and then tears it up and says that the old grandpa from the newcomer village gave it to him, placing a lot of expectations on him. He adds that it is specially designed to kill demonic gods like him. A huge dragon appears from its mouth, destructive crackling energy emanates. She heads straight for Brandy. The old man clenched his teeth and, calling the protagonist a puppy, tells him that they are on different sides. Danielle shouts that the teleportation is starting. A huge amount of purple energy emanates from the Necromancer. The main character and the Necromancer disappear, leaving only a magic circle in their place. The guy with the stubble received a golden notification from the system. The notice says that the adventurer Winter River betrayed the Light faction by joining the Dark faction, which angered the rulers of the Light faction. His killer will be rewarded with valuable equipment, as well as a one-of-a-kind hidden role. 2 more players are notified. All players in the newcomer village receive golden notifications from the system. The rabbit looks at the blue light that appears in the middle of the field. He has a shocked expression on his face. The protagonist and Danielle emerge from the blue light, saying that he is saved. A golden notice appears in front of the protagonist stating that he has become a traitor to the Light faction. The protagonist, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, wondered if the players would try to kill him at the first meeting, given the generous rewards they were promised. A notification appears with a system reminder that the protagonist has left the newcomer village and violated the agreement with Kalo, so all residents of the newcomer village will hunt him. Since the protagonist helped the Necromancer Danielle withstand the Pyromancer Brandy, the mission Kill the Demonic Gods has failed. The main character's punishment: Light faction reputation 100,000, level -50, and gold coins 10,000. The protagonist asks if 10,000 gold coins were really taken from him. He opens the bag and sees 0 gold coins and then makes a displeased expression on his face. He opens a window with information about the character and sees that he is now level 1. The main character grabs the teacher and tells him that he sacrificed too much to save him, and then adds that it is time to give him his awards. Danielle tells the protagonist to relax, because since he chose him, he will not offend him. After all, he is also his student. Winter River opens her eyes wide. He is enveloped in golden energy. A red system window appears, congratulating the main character on completing the mission and informing him that he has received 100,000 experience points, and the rare talent Devil's Trampling Rank S system notifications about leveling up appear, and the main character reaches level 14. He clenches his fist. He smiles and asks if he is also gaining a rare talent. A man shrouded in purple energy kicks another man. S-Rank Devil Trampling Description. This technique can only be learned by living beings who have evil power within them. Once activated, it will deal a double blow to both the enemy's body and his dignity, which is why this talent is so famous in the Tianheng continent. Effect: concentrate power in your legs to use in 2 seconds before activation. Movement speed will increase by 200%, and attack speed will increase by 100%. Cooldown 1 minute. The main character props up his chin and says that although this talent does not cause much damage, it has enormous power to humiliate people because the blow is delivered directly to the enemy's face. He adds that in one word, powerful. Danielle tells the main character that this talent was lost through the centuries and he accidentally stumbled upon it in the crypt of a powerful man. He says that it's a pity that he is a magician and is not strong enough to use it. He adds that he could not study it and therefore simply kept it, and the main character became its happy owner. He says that he believes that the main character will get much more from the Dark Faction by using this skill. The main character says that this talent does not use weapon bonuses in any way, and then asks if its damage will be too low. Danielle, with a serious expression on his face, says that he has already mentioned that the devilish trampling seems to be stuck in time and many strong personalities in the Dark Faction would like him to pass this talent on to them. The main character with a smile on his face says that then everything is great, and then asks the teacher if there are any more awards. Danielle asks the main character if he really still wants it and tells him that he shouldn't be so greedy. He adds that the main character thinks that he lost, but in fact, although he spent a one-time scroll with a forbidden curse, he received a rare S-rank talent that was lost in time. The main character smiles and says that he doesn't think he lost, he just wants to grow faster. The Necromancer goes forward and tells the main character that if he wants to grow, then practice is necessary, and equipment is nothing more than an external factor. He adds that they need to go, because although the Plane of Storms does not belong to the Light Faction, it is also not under the jurisdiction of the Dark One. He tells the protagonist that he will lead him to a place that is protected by demonic gods. They enter the gorge. The main character asks the teacher what he means when he talks about protecting the ancient gods. The teacher walks towards the currents of air and says that first they need to get to a safe place. He adds that he is now too weak to give the main character the protection of the demonic gods. An hour later, Badlands. The main character and the Necromancer are walking along a stone gorge, and behind them lies the skull of a monster with horns. Danielle turns towards the protagonist. He takes out a small bottle of potion and says that his wounds are almost healed, but he needs rest for 2 more days. He adds that this is medicine for the protagonist, and then adds that the monsters here are not strong and allows him to level up. The main character thanks the teacher with a smile on his face. A window appears with information about the healing elixir. Description: a precious medicine that costs so much that ordinary people would not even dream of obtaining it. Effect: after use, restores 500 HP every second for the next 10 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. A notification appears that the protagonist needs to accept the Train Yourself mission with difficulty C. The main character says that he accepts the mission. A system window appears with information about the task Train Yourself with difficulty C. Description: honing your skills is the basis of becoming stronger. Mission objective: kill 500 demonic lizards and then report to Danielle. The reward for the mission is unknown. There is a full moon in the sky. The main character is watching 2 lizards. A system window appears with information about the demonic lizard, a normal level 18 monster. Lizard characteristics: HP is 20,000, attack is 120-125, defense is 9-10, talent, biting and tearing. Description: originally an ordinary lizard that lived in the Gobi Desert. Her body underwent drastic changes after being trapped by the demonic aura. They have an extremely bad character and are very dangerous. The protagonist with a serious expression thought that their characteristics are much stronger, and in addition to HP with attack, their defense is 3 times higher than that of a level 12 demon wolf king. He adds that, nevertheless, he is much stronger and as long as they do not attack him in a group, everything will be fine. The protagonist is enveloped in purple energy. He pushes off the ground. The main character quickly runs towards the lizard from behind. He jumps and prepares to attack with his foot. He kicks the lizard and deals 1869 damage to it. A notification appears stating that the main character used Devil Trample and dealt 1869 damage to the demonic lizard, and also created a suppression effect due to which his opponent will not be able to fight for 2 seconds. The protagonist says, "Crazy murder." He makes 4 lightning sword attacks against the lizard, dealing 804, 870, 943, and then 1074 damage. The lizard opens its mouth with sharp teeth. She bites the protagonist's leg and deals 402 damage. Winter River smiles and tells the lizard that she does a good amount of damage, but it was unfortunate that he was her opponent. The main character stabs the lizard and kills it. For defeating her, he receives 500 experience points. A system window appears with information about the protagonist who has reached level 14. He has the following characteristics. HP is 7350, attack is 187-190, defense is 89-82, reputation is 1000 in the dark faction, and luck is 0. 3 lizards pay attention to the protagonist. The main character makes a cutting blow to several lizards and thought that he would maintain some distance so as not to be pinched. A wave of black and purple energy hits the lizards. A couple of minutes later, the protagonist makes a stabbing blow to the lizard. Next to him lie 4 corpses of lizards. A system notification appears in front of it. The protagonist was contacted by the dragon soaring 10,000 miles. He informs the protagonist that he has recently become famous because all the forums are buzzing about how to kill him. The main character collects coins from a dead lizard. He looks at the hand and sees 1 silver and 2 bronze coins, and then says that there is still too little money falling. The interlocutor asks the protagonist if he wants to sell his character. The main character asks about the sale with a surprised expression on his face. With a dissatisfied expression on his face, he thought that it was probably something like, "We help each other." He kills him and receives a reward for the murder. He adds that he has already joined the dark faction and if he is killed even once, his account will disappear. The main character refuses. The interlocutor offers 20,000 and the main character opens his eyes wide. He thinks that now is only the first days of the start of the game, but he can already offer 20,000 and even if his account is destroyed, 20 million will be enough to become filthy rich and live at the top of life. He clenches his hand into a fist and thinks that if it weren't for the Dark Swordsman's excessive way of increasing his power, maybe he would actually consider selling the account. He adds that 20 million is a lot, but he wants even more. Winter River, with a serious expression on her face, answers her interlocutor that no and adds that the punishment will be serious, and not simple like the usual lowering of the level. The dragon soaring 10,000 miles answers the protagonist that okay, but this is more due to the fact that there is now a very high reward for his head and until this ends, there will be people everywhere who want to kill him. He adds that once the protagonist dies, all benefits will be lost. The main character responds by saying that there is no need to worry about it, because the reward for him is so high for a reason. The interlocutor replies that he understands him, and then wants to spend an unforgettably fun time in the game. The main character opens his inventory with armor and weapons, and then says that he still has some equipment left and asks the interlocutor if he wants to buy it. A notification appears indicating that the screenshot has been sent. The dragon soaring 10,000 miles says that he will take everything for 30,000, and then asks the main character if he agrees to sell. The main character replies that he agrees, and the interlocutor then asks the protagonist where he is now and says that he will send someone to pick up his things. The main character asks to send a crafty thief so that he can get into the wasteland. He adds that he will indicate the place, but first he needs to hand over the money. The system window with voice communication closes. The system window has almost disappeared and the interlocutor agrees with the protagonist. The main character puts his sword aside and walks towards the lizard, and then says that he will continue to kill demonic lizards to complete the mission. He jumps towards the enemy. He makes a cutting blow to the lizard and decapitates it. The protagonist is enveloped in golden energy, and the system congratulates him on reaching level 15. The protagonist's skin becomes dark again. Purple lines appear on his body and he wonders what is happening and if he is evolving. A system notification appears with information that the protagonist has reached level 15, and the power of the Dark Swordsman has awakened, thanks to which he is learning the power of death talent. The protagonist is enveloped in purple energy. A system window appears with information about the death force of Ranked description. The Dark Swordsman is another version of the undead swordsman. He walks on the border between life and death, but is perfectly aware of himself. His recovery ability is terrifying, and even the Sacred Light has a hard time controlling him. Talent effect, outside of combat, restores 0.5% of HP every second, and in combat, this effect is reduced to 0.1%. Winter River smiles and his skin returns to normal. He says that this is essentially a divine technique, and in 1 minute he will restore 30% of his health. He adds that if he can't win, he can run away and then come back with full health and fight again in less than 4 minutes. The dragon, hovering 10,000 miles away, tells the protagonist that he has transferred him 30,000. The main character replies that it's good and adds that he hid the equipment over there, and then he can go and pick it up. A blue system notification appears, where it says that in eternity, when the player decides to hide equipment, the system reminds that white equipment will become unowned and will be updated in 24 hours. The same thing will happen with bronze equipment after 3 days, and with silver equipment this will happen only after a week. The dragon soaring 10,000 miles replies that it's good and says that he will say again that if the protagonist gets good equipment, then he needs to remember them. The Dragon Guild, they can always get a fair payment for it. The main character replies that there is no problem. He runs towards another lizard. An hour later, the defeated lizard lies near the protagonist. A system notification appears with the progress of the mission to kill demonic lizards, according to which he killed 93 lizards out of 500. Boots appear in place of the lizard, and the main character exclaims that something finally dropped from them, and then adds that something has a chance of falling too low in this game. A blue system window appears with information about bronze quality sand boots, which provide 6-10 protection. Effect, movement speed plus 2%. Required level, 16 description, a pair of shoes that everyone should wear if they plan to plow through the sand. These boots have good grip and are not easy to damage. The ordinary people of Tianheng love them. The protagonist smiles and says that the characteristics of the equipment are not bad. But what a pity, he is still 1 level below the required level. The shoes will not work and then he will continue to swing further. The main character makes a worried expression on his face. Blue distortions appear and someone tells the protagonist that he was not that diligent even when he passed the Gaokao, and it seems that he was really interested in the game. He adds that he needs to log out and at least eat. There are many skyscrapers in the city at night. Someone says that the last description was his mistake and he could not even think that Winter River would be so strong that even 100 people could not defeat him. The gray-haired man bows to the black-haired man and calls him brother too, and then tells him that it was his fault, and he made a mistake in guiding them. Two props up his chin and tells the gray-haired man that this problem has nothing to do with him. Because it was a group of loners, it was impossible to force them to strictly follow his commands. He adds that he shouldn't worry and just needs to continue working. The gray-haired president asks Two to also go and rest early. The black-haired man makes an angry expression on his face. He clenches his hand into a fist and says that he and the Winter River have a problem, and as long as he plays Eternity, the people who want to kill him will never end. Blue distortions appear in the gorge. The main character appears at the site of distortion. The main character pays attention to something. The lizard hits him with its tail and deals 10 damage. Her red eyes glow brightly. The protagonist pushes away, losing some of his health, and shouts that young demonic lizards have no idea about honesty. A huge lizard looks at the protagonist. A system window appears with information about the demonic lizard king, a level 20 bronze boss. She has the following characteristics. HP is 100,000, attack is 180-180, and defense is 120. Talents, bite and tear, scatter enemies, poisonous skin. Description, a mutated form of a demonic lizard with enhanced strength that kills mercilessly and is a formidable foe for adventurers. The protagonist smiles and thought that he could kill him since he is a bronze level boss. The main character moves his sword to the side and runs towards the demon lizard king. He pushes off the ground. He performs a purple energy shrouded kick to the lizard's head. A purple system notification appears indicating that the protagonist used Devil Trample and dealt 1073 damage to the demonic lizard and also created a suppression effect. The protagonist's opponent cannot move for 0.35 seconds. The main character asks with a surprised look if this is it. The Lizard King is enveloped in green energy. The main character is now also enveloped in green energy and is dealt twice 50 units of health. A notification appears stating that the protagonist is affected by the poison from the demonic Lizard King's poisonous skin and will lose 50 HP every second for 10 seconds. The main character says that it seems that it will not be possible to save the medicine that Danielle gave him, and then drinks a healing potion and restores 1000 health units. He jumps on the lizard and swings his sword. He hits her on the head and deals 575 damage. He makes a few more strikes that send out dark purple waves of energy. The Lizard King opens his red eyes wide. She puts her huge tail in front of her. The main character holds his sword at the ready and shouts, asking her if she is seriously going to pull this off. He dodges the tail attack made by the lizard. The protagonist cuts off her tail with a precise blow. The main character with a crazy smile tells the Lizard King that he will pay for this. He goes around the lizard to the right. A couple of minutes later, Winter River jumps on the Lizard King and hits him. The system congratulates the protagonist for killing the bronze level boss, the Demon Lizard King. The protagonist sees a lot of silver coins in front of him and is surprised at how much money falls from him at a time. He asks what equipment he will drop, and then adds that he can't wait. The protagonist opens his eyes wide in surprise. He sees in front of him a yellow breastplate and a staff with a yellow stone on top of it. A yellow notification appears with information about armor made of bronze rank yellow stone, which gives 22-25 protection. Effect, defense plus 8%. Required level, 20. Description, fairly durable body armor. It can be used to hide in the desert and ambush enemies. Another yellow system notification appears with information about the bronze rank demon stone staff, which gives 25-30 attack. Effect, attack plus 10%. Effect, HP gained from attacking enemies with spells plus 5%. Required level, 20. Description, a precious beginner's staff, which can become a real treasure for novice magicians. The main character says that the armor's characteristics are not bad, but he needs level 20 before he can use it. It's too early for it. He adds that regarding the staff, its attack is relatively high and even restores HP. But he is not a magician. Using the system window, he calls the dragon soaring 10,000 miles away, and then says that he has acquired equipment and asks if he wants to buy it. The interlocutor tells the main character that the level of this equipment is too high. No one in the guild will be able to use it. The main character says that sooner or later they will be able to use it. Plus the characteristics on the staff indicate that it is quite useful, so why doesn't he name the price? The interlocutor says that he can only offer 50,000 and this equipment is for the early levels of the game and no matter how good it is, it will be replaced very quickly. The main character answers the interlocutor what to do. He knows, and then adds that he will first transfer the money and then send someone to the wasteland. Winter River with a smile on his face says that he was able to get 100,000 in just a couple of days. He adds that he is confident that the untapped potential of eternity will bring him even more in the future. The main character stands in front of 3 lizards and says that he is already done with the mission that the teacher gave, so he will just kill a couple more and that's enough. He hits one of the lizards and cuts it into 2 parts. He strikes another lizard in the neck. The system congratulates the protagonist on reaching level 16. The protagonist is enveloped in golden energy and he says that he is now level 16 and can put on the shoes that he knocked out earlier. The main character puts on new boots and says that now he is finally fully equipped and will now continue in the same spirit. The evening sky rises above the buildings. The main character takes off his virtual reality helmet and sighs, and then says that he is hungry and that he should at least order delivery. He picks up the phone and sees that Wang Kai asks the main character if he is here and invites him to have a barbecue. The main character, with a smug smile on his hand, types a message and says that this brat is bullying again, and then adds that of course they will see each other at their usual place. Wang Kai is the protagonist's friend from university. They met over a video game, but became really close after they graduated. High-rise buildings tower over the city. The main character in a black jacket walks among the townspeople. He sees a guy with brown hair and a blue jacket sitting at a table. Wang Kai hugs the protagonist in a friendly manner and calls him Brother Han, and then says that they have not seen each other for a long time and he has work for him. The main character asks his friend what kind of work he has. The brown-haired guy replies that we are talking about a pro player. They sit down at the table and eat kebabs. Wang Kai tells the main character that with his abilities, it would be remiss not to play professionally. He adds that he works at a studio that is preparing to make a big splash with Eternity, so he can introduce him to them and they will work together. The protagonist eats a kebab and says that he would prefer to refuse. The brown-haired guy points his finger at the protagonist and asks him if he is really afraid that he will interfere with him. He says that it would be very unbrotherly of him, and then says that they pay quite a lot and if he officially joins, he will receive about $8,000 a month, plus insurance and a pension. He adds that this will be enough and there will still be left for a more comfortable life. The main character has a misunderstanding on his face. Wang Kai says that besides, with his skills one could easily earn more than 10,000. The main character with a smile on his face says that he meant that he prefers to work independently. The brown-haired guy asks the protagonist about independent work. Wang Kai, with a smile on his face, points his finger at the protagonist and calls him a scoundrel, and then says that this means that he has already started playing. Han says Eternity's virtual reality is so realistic that it is called the second world. He adds that he could not help but be affected by something so tempting. The brown-haired guy asks the protagonist what his nickname is, and then says that he will add him as a friend later. The main character, with a smile on his face, puts his hand forward and says that this is a secret. With concern on his face, he thought that now everyone was hunting for him and, just in case, he would not reveal his name for now. Wang Kai tells the protagonist that it's so secretive, and then asks him if he's being stalked in the game or something like that. The evening sky dominates the backdrop of tall buildings. Wang Kai tells the main character that he will reveal a secret to him, and then tells him that he heard here that once the player reaches a certain level of power in Eternity, he will be able to enter the secret area. The main character asks what secret area we are talking about. The friend replies that he's not exactly sure when this happens, but it seems to happen automatically as soon as the desired level is reached. He adds that this is apparently related to the adventurer's talent, because the Eternity people prefer to use a test to determine the strength of the talent they receive, rather than a lucky draw. The main character asks his friend how he found out about this. Wang Kai replies that he already said that he joined a fairly reliable studio, and they want to make a splash in the game. He gets up from his chair and says that there are enough questions, because it's time for him to go back to work. The game has a yellow sky. Daniel sits in the ravine. He tells the protagonist that he didn't think he would finish the mission so quickly. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek and he thought that he was already sick of grinding. He asks the teacher to give him a reward. The Necromancer tells the main character not to worry, because he will never offend his students. Daniel touches the protagonist's forehead. The main character receives a system notification informing him that he is receiving 25,000 experience points and a silver rank storage ring. Winter River is enveloped in golden energy, and the system congratulates him on reaching level 17. The main character looks at his hand and asks the Necromancer if he really gave him equipment, and even of the silver rank. A green system window appears with information about the silver rank storage ring. Effect: warehouse capacity increased by 20 slots. Description: a valuable item worn by everyone in Tianheng who has power. Thanks to it, you can use or store items and equipment with greater convenience. The protagonist asks the teacher if he knows anything about the adventurer's talents. The Necromancer asks the protagonist about his talents. He says that only a few days have passed since they, the adventurers, came to Tianheng and still have not collected their talents. He adds that it is natural that the protagonist would ask this question. The main character asks Daniel if he can be a little more specific. The Necromancer says that when they undoubtedly become as strong as the inhabitants of this world, they will be able to enter a special secret space and undergo a special test there, and after the test they will have about an hour to obtain the desired talent. He adds that these talents are like balloons, each a different color, and when they choose a talent they like, they can leave. The main character asks if they really give you a whole hour to choose from. Daniel, with a smile on his face, says that it's not that much. The truth is that most talents are quite ordinary, and then says that most of the time he will find C or D rank talents for the entire hour. He adds that, for example, his talent C is called Healing Obsession and gives a small chance of getting a second medicine during its production. The Necromancer, with a serious expression on his face, says that he heard that the sword god from the Light faction has a talent called Sword Heart. He adds that when you use a sword, its final damage increases by 80%, which is enough to make everyone jealous. The main character asks the Necromancer what rank the Sword Heart type talent is it S rank? Daniel, with a serious expression, says no, this is SS rank, the highest talent rank in Tianheng. The main character asks if there really is no SSS rank and there is only SS. The Necromancer answers no. He reports that in the entire Tianheng continent you can count on one hand the people with SS rank talent, and this is the best possible rank. He puts his hand forward and says that here are all the ability ratings, from low to high, D, C, B, A, S, SS. He tells the protagonist that he doesn't need to think too much about it, because he gave him the S-rank ability Devil Trampling to defeat his enemies. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's face and he says that this is rather to benefit his allies. The main character puts his hands forward and asks the teacher what meets the standards of a local resident. Danielle replies that the standard of a local begins at silver rank, and what is more important is their power level, because some people can get into the secret space at level 20, and some require level 30 or higher. The Necromancer takes the staff with both hands and blue energy emanates from it. He tells the protagonist that he will learn the rest once he is strong enough. He informs the protagonist that the time has come to give him the protection of the demonic gods. The protagonist opens his eyes wide in surprise. The main character thought that he would finally receive the protection of the demonic gods. He adds that he will see what makes her so special that she can even replace the rebirth of an adventurer on the light side. Danielle points the staff at the protagonist and tells the great demonic god to protect his followers, because he, the Necromancer Danielle, vouches for Winter River, who is a loyal member of the Dark Faction. Blue energy from the staff envelops the main character. The main character's eyes turn black and his pupils turn purple. His skin turns dark purple again. A red system notification appears congratulating you on receiving the demon god's protection, giving the protagonist the ability to earn titles. The main character asks if this is all. A system notification appears, according to which the main character received the title Fallen for betraying the adventurers of the Light Faction. The main character presses his finger on the notification. A notification appears in a golden frame, which says that thanks to the title, the protagonist's HP has finally increased by 100%. A system window appears with information about the protagonist. It says that he is a Fallen One, Winter River, a level 17 bronze rank boss. His characteristics: HP increased from 8529 to 17,850, attack equal to 207-209, defense equal to 108-114, reputation equal to 1000, and luck equal to 0. Description: a fallen traitor to the Light Faction, who must be killed by brave adventurers, because his death will bring great benefit. The protagonist smiles and says that this is superpower, because he has finally become a boss too, and that means thanks to this title, all of his future HP will be doubled. He adds that he seems to now understand why the bosses have so much HP. Cheating players can respawn indefinitely and trade levels for the ability to continue leveling up and becoming stronger. A demon with wings kills the player with a trident, and then the player returns and defeats the monster. Thus, to maintain balance, the Dark Faction should be more difficult to kill. Above the protagonist, whose body is half turned into a monster, an adventurer and a demon are depicted, between whom there is a plus sign. Although they are the original inhabitants of this place, the bosses of the Dark Faction are doomed in most cases, but the main character is different. He's an adventurer who joined the Dark Faction, so he has the best of both worlds. The adventurer's ability quickly becomes stronger and he, as a boss, is harder to kill. Danielle asks Winter River how it is and if he is shocked by the effects of the demonic god's protection. The main character's skin becomes normal again and he says that there is such a thing. He looks at the Necromancer and asks him where they will go next, because they can't just hang around the area all the time. Danielle replies that his wounds are completely healed, so there is no longer any need to hide, and then asks to follow him. He turns around and tells the main character that he is more than just his teacher. The main character, with misunderstanding on his face, wonders why he is boasting so much. The Necromancer and the main character leave the gorge. A system notification will appear indicating that the main character has moved to the City of Darkness map. A system window appears with information about the City of Darkness, a first-level city. Description: originally called the City of Light and belonged to the Light Faction. It has been converted into part of the Dark Faction's territories under the leadership of the 10 great demon gods. But the Light Faction's determination to return the city to the light side never ends. A first-level city next to the base of the rulers of the Light Faction. This place has been a battlefield for many years. The moon rises in the sky. Someone shouts that the head of the city has returned, so you need to open the gates and welcome him. Winter River and the Necromancer stand opposite the gate. They come closer to the gate. The main character asks the teacher if he is the head of the City of Darkness. Danielle closes her eyes and says that she has been in this position for less than 6 months, so she doesn't know many people here yet. He adds that it was because of his power and the title of head of the city that he had a chance to break through to the spiritual level. The main character, with a surprised look, wonders how he was able to claim the rights to an entire first-level city. He thought that judging by the scant information provided officially about the city, the settlements are divided into 5 levels, from small to large: 4th level village, 3rd level city, 2nd level city, 1st level main city, and the highest level, super cities. Of these, there is only one super city on each server in the world. The main cities of the first level are directly below them, and to conquer them you need to be on the earth level or higher. In front of the Necromancer and the protagonist are many armed skeletons. One of the skeletons shouts that their lord has been away for months, but now he has finally returned. One of the skeletons exclaims that the deputy head has also returned, and the main character looks in his direction. A skeleton in armor stands on a horse. A system notification appears, which says that the skeleton in armor is the undead Knight Cantor, a gold-level boss whose characteristics are unknown. A skeleton in armor dismounted from his horse. He bows deeply to the Necromancer and shouts that he greets the head. The main character thought with a surprised look that even with a teacher who is at the dark gold level, and a gold-level boss, the light faction still puts enormous pressure on them. He adds that one light faction NPC can make this first-level city fall first. Danielle picks up the skeleton and says that there is no need for such flattery, and then thanks him for all their help. The Necromancer points his hand at the protagonist and says that this is a new student, Winter River. Cantor greets the protagonist and says that he senses that his evil aura is worth fearing, and that he has great potential. There is a huge moon in the background of the tower. The main character replies that of course, because in the history of Tianheng there was not a single weak dark swordsman. The protagonist says that he will leave them here, and then asks to let them know if they need anything. The Necromancer tells the main character that he can go. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek. He tells Danielle that this city is located close to the center of power of the Light faction, and then asks him if he is worried. The Necromancer smiles and says no, because he is a Necromancer and for him death is not something to be afraid of, because it is only a small price to pay for the right to become the main city. The main character, with concern on his face, thought that maybe the Necromancer is not afraid of death, but he hasn't lived much yet. Danielle tells the main character that she knows what he is thinking about, and then says that strictly speaking, Necromancers are not part of the Dark faction, so its elite is wary of them, because they do not want another invasion of the undead. The protagonist imagines an orc with an axe in his hand and thought that this was similar to what happened in the game, although he was then in the tribe, a rowdy. The Necromancer says that in Tianheng all living creatures fear and avoid the undead. He reports that he will die, but he received everything he wanted from this city and all that remains is to achieve his goal, so death is not scary for him. Danielle, with a serious expression on his face, tells the protagonist that as his teacher, he will not drag him down to hell with him, and then informs him that his position as the head of the city may seem like a dangerous thing. But before everything is over, he can give him some advantages by using your position. The main character asks what advantages, for example. The Necromancer puts his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and then says that the Dark and Light factions are preparing their weapons on the eve of a historical battle. Danielle says that at the moment they have not yet taken the first step, so the calm before the storm continues. He adds that before the battle begins, as his teacher, he will train him well and as the head of the city. He has many resources that will help him grow. The protagonist, with a surprised look, thought that who would have thought that this teacher he came across by chance could teach him so seriously. He wonders if he is a real person or an NPC. Danielle, with a smile on his face, tells the main character that although he cannot give him equipment and items just like that, he has other ways to help him. He adds that recently, near the city, wild mice were attacked by demonic energy. They often attack patrolling skeleton soldiers and their number continues to grow, so the protagonist must go and help deal with them. The protagonist receives a system notification asking him to accept the mission deal with the wild mice with difficulty. See, the main character asks the Necromancer if a living creature attacked by demonic energy does not become part of the Dark faction. Danielle sticks her hand out to the side and says that most wild animals that are attacked by demonic energy lose their minds and still have a pleasant goodwill towards animals of the same species, but they will fight everyone else to the death, regardless of faction. A shadow falls on the Necromancer's face. He tells the protagonist that he should know that dark swordsmen are notorious within the ranks of the Light faction. He adds that as soon as he attracts their attention, he will lose the chance to grow. A system notification appears with a description of the task. Deal with the wild mice of difficulty B description. You need to get rid of the wild mice that attack the skeleton soldiers. Destroying the root of the problem will be even better. Requirement: kill 500 demonic wild rats. The main character walks outside the city and asks where he should start in search of the source of the demonic wild mice. He looks at the skeleton and asks him where the most demonic mice are. The skeleton, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, says that it is obvious that she is a girl, and then asks him why he then calls her brother. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's face and he wonders how he should determine the gender of a pile of bones. He calls the skeleton young miss and then asks where he can find the demonic wild mice. The skeleton's face turned red and she said that they were especially prolific on the northern side of the City of Darkness. The main character, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, asks what follows from this. The skeleton replies that they also really like to rummage around in her body. It's very annoying and she's ashamed in front of her boyfriend. The main character enters the gorge. He sees rats with red eyes in front of him. In front of him are many red-eyed rats. He wonders if there are really that many of them. A system window appears with information about the protagonist. A system window appears next to the rats with information about their characteristics. Demonic wild mouse is a normal level 22 monster. Their HP is 35,000, and their attack and defense are 70-80. They have the skill No. The main character, with concern on his face, says that this flock is quite dangerous, and as soon as he provokes one mouse, at least 100 more will attack him. The mice run away from the protagonist and he wonders why this is happening, because he is not moving. A system notification appears informing you that the demonic wild mice have detected an evil aura hidden in the protagonist's body. Drops of sweat run down the protagonist's face and he asks who would have thought that this evil aura would actually work. The main character runs towards the rats and shouts at them not to run away. He pushes off the ground and uses Devil Trample. He hits several rats at once with his kick attack and deforms the floor. He smiles and tells the rats that since they decided to run away, they pose no threat to him. He swings his sword several times and dark purple waves of energy hit the rats. An hour later, the main character makes a cutting blow and gains experience. He makes a downward attack and gains more experience points. 2 hours later, the main character notices that there are bracers on the ground. A system window appears with a description of bronze-grade black iron bracers, which provide 10-12 defense. Protection effect, plus 3%. Required level, 20. Description: a piece of armor carefully crafted by a level 3 city blacksmith. Easily accessible for adventurers. A huge moon rises in the sky. The main character says that it's a pity that he needs level 20 to wear something good, so he'll have to put things in his inventory for now. The protagonist notices a system notification appear congratulating the player Forbidden Zone of the Gods from Manhwa for obtaining a rank B talent and becoming the first adventurer to receive the talent. He also receives additional rewards in the form of talent rank +1, reputation +10,000, free stat points +10. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and he asks if anyone has already received the talent, and then says that, as expected, many are now grinding. A purple system notification appears informing the protagonist to pay attention to the fact that his extermination of the demonic wild mice has angered the silver rank boss Demonic Mouse King. The ground beneath the protagonist is destroyed and he wonders who this demonic king of mice is. Someone came out of the ground. A purple system window appears with information about the Demonic Mouse King, a silver level boss. His HP is 150,000, attack is 220-230, defense is 140-155, and his talents are unknown. Description: the king of mice who stumbled upon a source of demonic energy. A terrible coincidence has led to the fact that the king has strength exceeding that of an ordinary mouse, but he usually hides from everyone. Bad luck for the adventurer who stumbles upon it. A huge rat with red eyes stands in front of the main character, who holds a sword in both hands. With a surprised expression on his face, he says that the defense is not too high, but his attack is simply ridiculous. He adds that he does not see his level and talents, but they should not be higher in level than his own. He holds the sword tightly in his hand and says that, however, this is a silver level boss. He adds that he didn't receive the reward for the first talent, so he can't let someone else get an advantage for killing the first boss of the silver level. The rat's eyes glow bright red. The rat runs towards the protagonist with its mouth wide open. She jumped on him. The protagonist hits the rat on the head using Devil's Trample. The rat pushes away. Devil Trampling suppressed the Demonic Mouse King for 0.2 seconds. The rat looks at the protagonist with a dissatisfied expression on his muzzle. She bites the protagonist and deals 5320 damage. The protagonist's health is slightly restored due to the fact that he drinks a healing potion. He says that the boss deals an incredible amount of damage and therefore he would not be able to defeat him without the title. The main character swings his sword at his enemy. He hits the rat and deals 1105 damage to it. An hour later, the boss's health bar only moves slightly. The rat is left with half its health and is enveloped in a destructive red aura. The protagonist stands opposite her. He thought that usually when the boss's HP is reduced to half, he will activate his talents, so he needs to prepare. The boss opens his mouth with sharp teeth. The protagonist looks away with a surprised expression on his face. Many rats run out of the crack. A huge number of rats surround the protagonist. Several rats approach the protagonist. They run back into the gap out of fear. The protagonist and the Demon Mouse King silently watch the fleeing rats. A system notification appears, where it is written that the evil aura surrounding the main character made the demonic Mouse King lose his enormous power, and therefore he decided to run away. The Rat King burrows into the ground. The main character shouts to the boss how dare he run away. He grabs the boss by his tail. The demonic Rat King pulls the main character along with him, and he asks the boss if he really thinks that he can escape in the middle of the battle. The boss with a frightened expression on his face is trying to run away. The main character hits the Rat King twice with his sword and deals 1280 and 1360 damage to her. He screams and asks her if she really wants him to not get the first kill. The rat breaks the wall and the main character lets go of its tail. He lands on the ground. The demonic Rat King stands near a purple crystal shrouded in purple energy and restores his health. The main character noticed something. He says with surprise on his face that he feels a wave of power in this area, and this must be the source. The protagonist looks at the purple crystal. This is the lilac electric diamond. Violet energy envelops the protagonist. The main character looks at his hand. A system notification appears informing that the light from the lilac electric diamond has illuminated the protagonist, and the evil energy in his body has been temporarily enhanced. All characteristics of the protagonist are increased by 1000% for 1 minute. The protagonist opens his eyes wide and screams and asks if all the characteristics have been increased by 1000%. A window with information about the character opens. He has 178,500 health, 1080 to 1140 attack, 1080 to 1140 defense, 1000 reputation and 0 luck. The rat looks at the protagonist with an angry expression on its face. A huge rat runs towards the main character. Shrouded in purple energy, the protagonist screams at the boss that he must die. He hits the rat several times quickly and deals 15,699, 17,888, 20,002, 23,988. The main character receives a system notification congratulating him for successfully killing the silver level boss Demon King of Mouse. Rewards received: experience plus 180,000. The main character is enveloped in golden energy, and the system congratulates him on his promotion to level 19. Another notification appears, according to which the main character receives additional rewards for being the first player to kill a silver level boss. He receives plus 1000 reputation, plus 20 stat points, and the rare item Power of Goodness. The main character, with a surprised expression on his face, asks what this Power of Goodness is. A blue scroll appears in front of him. A golden system notification appears with information about S-Rank Goodness Power. Effect: unconditionally increases B rank and low-level skills by 1 rank. Description: this item is a product of nature. It contains a power that only some gods possess and is immeasurably precious. However, in this world there are a few lucky ones who are favored by luck. Winter River says with a joyful expression that she can increase the rank of low-level skills. A system notification appears asking the protagonist if he needs to notify all adventurers on the Tianheng continent of his glorious achievement. After public notification, he will receive 10,000 reputation. The main character with a smile on his face says yes. A system notification appears congratulating the player Winter River from the eastern region for killing the first boss of the silver level. The red-haired girl asks what kind of silver level is this and aren't such bosses level 30 and above. The brown-haired guy shouts that he's only level 5 now, and then asks where this guy even came from. Brother creating chaos in the world sees the system notification and asks if this is the Winter River again. The main character approaches the defeated boss and says that he will see what equipment their Mouse King dropped. A system alert appears informing you that the protagonist's talent test will begin in 3 minutes. The protagonist has a surprised expression on his face. The main character clenches his hands into fists with a joyful expression on his face and asks why the talent tests begin so suddenly. The main character smiles widely and thought that he had 3 more minutes to prepare. Although obtaining talents requires a lot of luck, the trial is the only chance to catch a chance to increase their rank. According to what Danielle said, you can't use items or equipment in the challenges, but he didn't say you can't use your skills. The main character puts his hand with a blue scroll forward and thought that he was using the power of goodness to have a chance to get the best talents. He tears the scroll and blue energy appears between the parts of the scroll. The protagonist has a surprised expression on his face. A purple system notification appears indicating that the main character has used the S-rank item Power of Goodness and he needs to select the skill whose rank he would like to increase. Note: restricted to B rank or lower. The main character chooses the Dark Sword skill. A blue window appears with a notification that says that due to the influence of the Power of Goodness, the Dark Sword skill of rank B has changed to the Art of Killing of rank A. A purple notification appears with information about the Dark Sword skill of rank B. Description: a unique talent of a Dark Swordsman. His power is hidden under surface. Effect: attack plus 50. Other effects: attack speed plus 20%. Limitations: if a sword or similar weapon is equipped, the effect is 100%. With other weapons it gives only 50% of the effect. An icon appears with a sword strike from which black and purple energy emanates, as well as a purple notification with information about the skill Art of Killing rank A. Description: a unique talent of a Dark Swordsman. Previously, with his help, a lot of blood was shed on the Tianheng continent. The world shook. Only those who have committed countless murders can awaken this extremely powerful talent within themselves. Effect: base attack plus 200, attack plus 20%. Other effects: attack speed plus 50%. The main character with a smile on his face shouts that this skill is disgustingly strong, because the passive Dark Sword skill only increased his attack by 50. But when it turned into the Art of Killing, this figure increased 4 times, and it now provides a fixed increase in attack if removed requirement for swords and similar weapons. He adds that his current attack limit is only about 200, so the passive addition doubled it. The protagonist sees a purple crystal in front of him. The crystal breaks into small pieces. A blue system notification appears with information about the A-rank Lilac Electric Diamond. Description: a magical gem that can temporarily stimulate a person's latent power. If the player has a lot of stones, then their strength will be increased insanely, but if they have few, then the increase in strength will be negligible. Effect: increases strength according to hidden strength, lasts 1 minute. Usage: 2 out of 3. Note: hidden strength is influenced by many factors. The system calculates everything according to the player's level, role, talent, attributes, and more. A system notification appears informing you that the protagonist has received a rank A item, Lilac Electric Diamond. The main character looks at his hand with the diamond and says that the use has been reduced to 2 out of 3, because he has already used the stone once. He adds that it looks like this indicator was just added forcibly. The main character closes his eyes and says that if only he could give his characteristics a tenfold increase in the Lilac Diamond in the talent test. According to the system notification, in 10 seconds the protagonist will enter the talent test. The protagonist is enveloped in blue energy, and the countdown begins. The main character disappears. Only a blue clot of energy remains in his place. The Winter River appears in the middle of the forest. A blue system notification appears indicating that the test has begun. You need to kill the enemy in 10 minutes, and if successful, the possible talent rank that the protagonist can receive will be upgraded to CD rank. If the test fails, the talent rank will remain D. The main character turns around and the countdown begins. The protagonist sees a rabbit eating grass. A system window appears with information about the level 1 Wild Ehrlich. Its characteristics are as follows: HP is 100, attack is 3-3, defense is 1-1, and there are no talents. Description: an ordinary wild rabbit appeared at a talent test. It is unknown what fate awaits him. The main character looks at the rabbit and thought that its characteristics are worse than that of the slime, and then wonders if he is some kind of joke for this test. The main character opens a red window of the system with information about the character, where his level is 1. He says that although his level has dropped to 1, it seems that he can contribute the free points that the system awarded him. The protagonist has 20 unallocated points. The main character controls the system window with his finger and says that he will spend all the attack. He kicks the rabbit and all that is left is an eye. A system notification appears according to which the main character has fulfilled the requirements and the possible rank of the talent he received will be CD. Someone materializes in front of the protagonist. A purple notification appears with information that the protagonist needs to kill the enemy in 10 minutes. On success, the possible talent rank he can obtain will be upgraded to BD rank, and on failure, the talent rank will remain CD. A skeleton appears in front of the protagonist. The skeleton is enveloped in a blue aura. The main character receives a notification that he has reached level 10 and says that everything is obvious. During the test, the level of both sides will be equal. The skeleton runs towards the protagonist. The main character swings his fist at the skeleton. He hits it with a powerful blow and the skeleton is immediately destroyed. The main character puts his hands together and says that he wants to see what kind of talent he will receive for the role of a dark swordsman, in addition to the art of killing. The protagonist sees blue energy in front of him. A wild wolf appears in front of the protagonist. A blue system notification appears with information about the demonic wild wolf, a level 20 normal monster. His HP is 30,000. Attack is 130-140, defense is 80. Talent, Bite and Tear. Description, first appears in the talent challenge. Defeating him will show that the main character is a skilled adventurer. The werewolf runs towards the main character. The protagonist sighs and says that this is not even a boss, it's not worth much attention. The main character clenches his hand into a fist with a smile on his face. A system notification appears that the protagonist's level increases to 20. The boss attacks the protagonist with his hand. The main character punches the boss in the stomach. The demonic wild wolf opens his mouth due to pain. A new enemy materializes in front of the protagonist. A system notification appears, congratulating the protagonist for fulfilling the requirements, and also that the rank of talents that he can receive has increased to add. The main character looks down and says that it doesn't seem particularly difficult. A warrior in plate armor whose eyes glow appears in front of the protagonist. The main character and the warrior are running towards each other. They exchange a lot of blows. The protagonist hit the warrior's head with his fist. The warrior is pushed back after a powerful blow, and the main character receives a system notification congratulating the protagonist for fulfilling the requirements. Further, it is written that the rank of talents that he can obtain has increased to SD. The protagonist says that the next rank should be SSS. A system notification appears with information that the protagonist needs to kill the enemy in 10 minutes, and if successful, the possible talent rank that the protagonist can receive will be upgraded to SB rank. If the protagonist fails the test, the talent rank will remain SD. A new enemy materializes in front of the protagonist. A winged tiger appears in front of him, emitting crackling purple energy. A purple system window appears with information about the young violet winged tiger, a dark gold level boss. Character level is 1. HP is 50,000. Attack is 360-380. And defense is 150-150. Talents, Wings of Thunder, Thunder Roar, Intimidate the Ruler, Thunder Punishment. Description, a member of a species of thunder-winged, powerful tigers that live on the top of Mount Leon. Although he was born recently and has not yet reached his full strength, he must seek out adventurers and challenge them. The protagonist's eyes glow purple and he says that previous tests raised the talent rank ceiling, and the next one simply increases their minimum level. He adds that this means that he can only get a D rank talent, even after passing all the tests. Whether he gets an S or not will depend on luck. A blue notification appears stating that the protagonist's level has been temporarily increased to 40. The main character is enveloped in golden energy and he says that the level has increased to 40, and his attack has increased to 576. The main character is pushed off the ground. He punches the tiger on the head. The tiger growls pitifully after the protagonist's attack. The main character stands almost close to the enemy. He kicks the tiger in the head and shouts at him to sit down. He punches the tiger several times. Purple crackling energy appears in the air. Winter River is struck by lightning. It was the attack of the purple winged tiger, Thunder Punishment. The main character punches the tiger on the head and screams at it to die. A blue system notification appears congratulating you on completing the requirements. The rank of talents that the protagonist can obtain has increased to SB. The tiger will disappear, and according to the system notification, the protagonist receives 5 free stat points. The main character with a smile on his face asks if he really received additional awards. He controls the system window and says that he will put all his points into the attack. Streams of water appear in front of the main character. In place of the streams of water, a monster with the head of a tiger with horns and the body of a reptile materializes. Water Killin, a god-level boss. The main character opens his eyes wide and asks if this is a god-level boss, and the test is so difficult. A blue notification appears with information that the protagonist needs to pay attention to the fact that his level has been temporarily increased to 50 and will return to its original level after passing the test. Streams of water float in front of the protagonist. A system window appears with the characteristics of the protagonist at level 50. His HP is 25,000, attack is 600, defense is 250, reputation is 120,000, and luck is 0. The main character says that now he has 600 attack and his talent the art of killing was not so strong before. He adds that in addition to the fixed attack, it increases the attack by another 100%, and it will definitely not be useless. According to the system notification that appears, you need to kill the enemy in 10 minutes and if successful, the possible talent rank that the protagonist can receive will be upgraded to SA rank. If you fail, you will remain at rank SB. The water killing goes to the main character. A system window appears with information about a level 1 enemy. His HP is 100,000, attack is 680, defense is 360. Talents: Water Breathing, Rolling Ice Wave, Triumph and Divinity, Ban, Ocean Mastery. Water streams appear near the water killing. A blue system window appears. Description: An extremely rare creature, most living have never seen it, lives in the endless seas. Being a source of goodness, he has innate control over water. In his youth he is very strong. After reaching adulthood he has the opportunity to enter the realm of deities and become one of the strongest beings on Tianheng. Appearing in one of the talent test levels can affect the real world. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek and he says that the enemy of a much higher level than the dark gold one from the last test has jumped at least 3 levels: Spirit, Earth and Sky. He adds that although he is level 50, the stats of a god rank level 1 boss clearly give him an advantage, albeit less than his talents, so it will be difficult with him. The water killing approaches the protagonist. The main character says that his last talent is preceded by the word ban and wonders what this means and whether a level 1 water killing can already cast curses. The enemy opens its mouth and concentrates blue energy. A beam of energy is directed at the main character. The protagonist dodges the destructive beam. The main character was hit by the attack. He gritted his teeth and thought that even his normal attacks caused a lot of damage. A water killing jumps on the protagonist. It attacks it with its front paws and deals 45-55 damage to it. The enemy knocked the protagonist to the ground. The main character thought how much damage there is from ordinary attacks. The water killing opens its mouth and concentrates blue energy. The main character gritted his teeth and thought about what he should do, because he was under control and would he really lose. The protagonist thought that to be honest, he did a good job and if he was lucky, he could get an S-rank talent, but he was not ready to accept this end. The protagonist pursed his lips. He spat in his enemy's mouth. The water killing jumped away from the protagonist. He spits water out of his mouth. The main character with a smile on his face tells the enemy that he is not the only one who knows how to spew water, and they, people, also have innate control over water. A red system notification appears stating that the water killing's hatred towards the protagonist has increased by 1,000. The monster is enveloped in blue energy. A red system alert appears with information that the water killing was angered by the protagonist's taunts and is now going to use the talent ban. Ocean Domain. The protagonist is standing in the water. With concern on his face, he thought that he would demolish him in one blow. Powerful purple energy emanates from the protagonist's chest, and a purple aura envelops his body. The system congratulates the protagonist for reaching level 50 and awakening the hidden power of the Dark Swordsman during battle. He has learned the skill, Rank S Dark Reincarnation. Streams of powerful crackling energy emanate from the protagonist. He gritted his teeth and thought that the dark energy in his body was about to explode, because he could not control it. He shouts that he hopes it will be cool. A purple system window appears with information about the S-rank Dark Reincarnation. Description: Dark swordsmen walk on the brink between life and death. They are not afraid of death, but thirst for battle and have the strength that allows them to use every last drop of their body's power to achieve victory. Effect: the protagonist's stats are increased by 50% for 5 minutes. Negative effect: after using this skill, the character's level will drop by 10. Cooldown time, 7 days. The main character smiles maliciously and says that this skill harms both you and your opponent, so ordinary players should think twice about whether to go down 10 levels for a 5-minute increase in stats, but for him it is simply divine. The main character clenches his hand into a fist and says that in the end, he can level up again. But he only has 1 life, because he is from the Dark faction, which means that dying means starting all over again. A system window appears with information about the protagonist. His health is increased by 37,500, attack by 900, and defense by 375. The main character is enveloped in streams of purple energy. The water killing looks at the main character and asks him how he mastered such a powerful dark force. A drop of sweat runs down the monster's cheek. The main character, with a surprised look, thought that the enemy was really talking. The protagonist smiles maliciously and tells the monster that if he admits defeat, he will tell. The water near Killen rises and he shouts to the protagonist to dream. The main character runs at the monster and says that then he has nothing to say. He kicks the monster's head and a notification appears that he used devil trampling to suppress the water Killen for 0.5 seconds. The protagonist swings his fist at the enemy. He hits Killen multiple times and deals 10,807, 4481, 4975, 5555, 6589 damage. The enemy is pushed back by these attacks. Killen shouts that the protagonist knows the devil's trampling, which was lost in time. The main character smiles smugly and says that he can also breathe underwater, and then asks the monster if he wants to learn this. Killen kicks the ground and screams at the protagonist to die. A huge cube of water appears. A blue system notification appears informing you that the aquatic Killen has used his skill ban, Ocean Domain, and now all enemy units in the area will be attacked by strong sea creatures within 3 minutes. The main character, with concern on his face, asks what kind of sea creatures these are. The main character swings his fist at Killen and thinks that he needs to end this quickly. The water snake heads towards the protagonist and opens its mouth. She bit the main character on the hand. A purple system notification appears with information that the main character was attacked by a poisonous sea snake and will now lose 500 HP every second for 10 seconds. The main character runs to Killen and thought that it was only 5,000 and everything would be fine with him. The main character's leg is grabbed by the tongue and 3096 units of damage are dealt to him. He turns around and sees a toad grabbing him. The protagonist frees himself from the grip and runs towards the Killen. He jumped on him and screams at him to die. He mounts the monster and punches it, then screams for it to die. The monster clenches his teeth and shouts to the protagonist to stop insulting the honor of Killen. The main character, with a smug expression on his face, raises his fist and tells the monster that he should just be an auspicious symbol, and since when is he so good at fighting? The monster tries to throw the protagonist off and shouts at him to shut up, and then asks him how dare he use such dirty tricks. The protagonist, with a worried expression on his face, thought that he just wanted to distract the water Killen without using another skill. Someone tells Killen, calling him Jia to stay calm, because he shouldn't lose his head when fighting the enemy, so he should watch out for his skills to recharge. The protagonist looks around, and Killen has a surprised expression on his face. The main character wonders if one of the inhabitants is watching the talent test. He tells the monster that no good should be expected from a person spying on him riding a Killen in broad daylight. He adds that he and others like him only make him suspicious, so you shouldn't listen to them. The water Killen has an angry expression on his face. The main character jumped away from the monster. He kicks the monster in the head. A blue notification appears informing you that the protagonist used Devil's Trample and successfully interrupted the rolling ice wave skill, and also suppressed the enemy for 0.5 seconds. The main character punches the monster many times. Killen's health is reduced to 20%. The monster remains at 10% health. The main character is about to take another hit, but notices something. A huge blue shark with an open mouth swims towards the protagonist. Winter River punches Killen in the face. The shark and Killen disappear after being hit by the protagonist. A system notification appears congratulating the protagonist for completing the requirements. The rank of talents he can obtain has increased to Saw. The protagonist, with a satisfied expression, says that it must be time to choose a talent, and he hopes that it will be rank S. The system congratulates the protagonist for defeating the water Killen, and he receives 10 stat points as a reward. The system congratulates the protagonist on reaching the talent selection stage. Someone tells the protagonist that he is not so bad, but unfortunately, he turned into the wrong camp. The main character looks towards blue distortions in space. The main character, with a smug smile on his face, asks his interlocutor if he really thinks that by joining the light faction, he will correspond to the light. The interlocutor tells the protagonist that given his strength, sooner or later they will meet again. The blue distortions in space disappear. The main character answers his interlocutor that he hopes that they will not meet as enemies. A system notification appears congratulating you on passing all talent tests and moving on to the talent selection stage. Note: talent cannot be improved, replaced, or forgotten. It will remain for life. The main character looks at the system window with a surprised expression. He asks, is there really no test for SS rank? The space around the main character changes. Many talent balls appear around him. The main character touches the ball with a rank talent and asks if these are all talents. A window appears with information about the rank talent Solid Rock, which increases final defense by 20%. The main character asks if all rank talents are really that strong. He thought that this was not just protection, but the ultimate defense. He adds that this is a completely different case, although it belongs to the same category. People who have such talent have full defense points, are extremely durable and resilient compared to an ordinary person. The protagonist imagines a man in armor protecting himself with 2 shields. The main character, holding a ball in his hand, says that the best defense is an attack. He thought that, as they say, those with the thickest armor hit the hardest, and if the defense is high enough, he will be able to protect himself, but will not be able to prevent others from attacking his teammates. He adds that if a teammate dies and the player faces a group attack, then no matter how he responds to the attacks, he will sooner or later lose. A warrior in armor is kicked by several people. The main character releases the ball with the talent and says that in comparison, he prefers to receive extreme damage, and besides, if the dark reincarnation can reach 6 stars, it would be a loss not to choose a talent that helps in the attack. The protagonist looks at the many other talents and says that it seems like a whole hour is enough, but there are too many energy spheres and there are too many to choose from. Even if you only briefly look at each of them, you still get the feeling that he is blinded. The main character runs between the talents and touches them. Information appears about the rank invulnerable talent, which increases HP by 30%. A system window appears with information about the rank fear of fire and water talent, which increases resistance to water and fire by 50%. Another system window appears where it is written about the talent rank Rupture, which deals an additional 20% of the fixed damage value to the enemy every second, lasting 10 seconds, and can stack up to 10 times. The main character, with concern on his face, thought that they were all rank. He clenches his hand into a fist and shouts, "Why not give him an S rank?" 10 minutes pass and he touches another rank orb. 20 minutes pass and the protagonist continues to encounter only rank talents. The protagonist touches the golden orb. He grabbed the sphere with the letter S written on it. A golden window of the system appears where it is written about the immortal talent of rank S, which during the battle restores 0.3% of health per second, and after leaving the battle, 2% per second. The protagonist holds a shining ball in his hand and says that this is an incredible talent, so if immortality and death overlap, then the recovery power will be simply abnormal. He adds that during combat it will be possible to restore 0.4% of HP per second, and outside of combat you can restore full HP in less than a minute. The protagonist, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, thought that this was not an attacking talent after all. He says that he will hold it for now, and if he cannot find the right talent in time, then he will take this one. 40 minutes pass. The protagonist continues to search for offensive talent. 50 minutes pass. The protagonist looks around with concern on his face. He notices another S-rank talent and shouts that here he is. He reaches out with his hand towards the golden ball. He touches the ball and shouts that everything depends on him. A golden system window appears with information about the S-rank Madness talent, which reduces defense by 20% but increases final attack by 40%. The protagonist looks at the ball with a smug smile and shouts that this is good, and even though it has a negative effect that makes it weaker, the improvement in attack is unprecedented. He adds that in the last stage of the attack, with the power of madness, the effect will be greatly increased. A blue system window appears, where the system asks the protagonist if he wants to choose madness as his talent. The protagonist agrees with this. A blue system window appears, congratulating the protagonist on receiving the insanity special talent. Black and purple energy flows towards the protagonist. The main character closes his eyes and thought that he was done, and the only thing he regrets is that he was never able to see the SS-Ranked talent. A system window appears congratulating the protagonist on becoming the second player in the north to receive the talent. Another system window appears with information that the main character receives rewards in the form of 1 talent level, reputation plus 1000, as well as free stat points plus 5. The protagonist has a surprised expression on his face. He is silent for a short time. A system window appears informing him that his S-rank Madness talent has been upgraded to SS Domination. Another system notification appears congratulating the protagonist on achieving SS rank and good luck +1. The main character, with a satisfied expression on his face, shouts that he did not expect that the game would be so generous to the second player who received the talent. It turns out a blue system window that the protagonist has completed the talent test and will be returned to his original place. The main character disappears from the talent test space. Blue particles of the system appear in the gorge. The protagonist materializes in the middle of the gorge and the rats immediately run away from him. The main character opens the system window and says that you need to look at the improved talent. A purple system window appears with information about the SS-Ranked domination talent, which increases the final attack by 50%. The main character smiles and thought that the effect of the talent is simple and crude, and also, unlike madness, it does not reduce defense, and the final attack is increased by an additional 10%, which is in no way worse than the talent Sword Heart from the light faction of the Sword God. The protagonist smiles widely and thought that in fact, dominance is much stronger. The main character puts his hands to the sides and shouts to the system that he loves her. He has a surprised expression on his face. He looks at the shine to the side of him and says that he forgot to look at what fell from the Mouse King. There are coins, boots, a helmet, and a sword on the ground. The main character exclaims that it seems to be full of good equipment. A muscular man with an open torso squeezes his biceps. A system window appears where information about this player is written. His name is Forbidden Zone of the Gods. His class is Assassin. His level is 19. And he is also the owner of the first talent on the entire server. Another blue system window appears, where it says that he has the talent Swift Rank A, which increases the final movement speed by 30%. Forbidden Zone of the Gods says that if anyone wants to get advice from a handsome brother like him, they can private message him. People write comments on the broadcasts. One of them asks if all US players are so aggressive. Another commentator writes that this guy is very lucky that he has a rank A talent. Another commentator asks what kind of pumped up assassin this is. The main character sits at the computer with instant noodles brewed and says that this player is acting so arrogant because of some rank talent. He eats the noodles and says that however, he is already gifted with high speed, since he has the assassin class. He adds that what a pity that in the face of absolute power, all skills are nothing more than tricks. He puts the helmet on his head and says great, now that he's had enough to eat and drink, it's time to log into the game. The protagonist materializes in the gorge. He opens the system window and says that the mission Get Rid of Wild Mice is completed. The boss gave him 3 pieces of silver rank equipment and 50 silver coins. A system window appears with information about the silver rank shiny golden helmet, which gives 18-22 defense, 800 HP, and increases HP by another 8%. Required level 22. Another system window appears with information about the Sword of the Mouse King of the Silver Rank, which gives 6-80 and an additional 10% attack. Additional effect, attack speed plus 10%. Required level 25. Another system window appears with shiny golden boots of Silver Rank, which give 20-25 and 8% protection, 100 HP. Required level 30. The main character with a dissatisfied expression on his face says that unfortunately, the Sword of the Mouse King requires level 25, and boots are even higher, as much as 30. The main character looks away and says that he is still 27% short of level 20, so it's time to try out his new talent. The main character starts to run. He holds a sword in both hands and attacks the rats. The main character hits the rats with an overhead blow and inflicts 11,487 damage on them. He draws his sword behind his back. Winter River with a satisfied expression says that the attack power of about 750 is really amazing. A system notification appears in front of the protagonist, where the protagonist is asked if he wishes to notify all adventurers located on the Tianheng continent about his glorious exploits. Note, after the announcement throughout the server, the main character will be able to receive 5,000 reputation. The main character with a smile on his face says yes. A system notification appears congratulating the Winter River player from the eastern region for receiving the SS-Ranked domination talent. As the second adventurer to acquire the talent, he receives additional rewards, talent level +1, reputation +1,000, free stat points +5. Several players surrounded the lizard. A man in armor with a shield shouts that Winter River has received an SS-Ranked talent. The player with the sword shouts, does the game system really love this guy that much? The girl with black hair says that he is much stronger than the first adventurer who received the talent, because he has the rank of SS. The guy with the shield behind his back asks if it's him again, and with the SS rank talent at that. The guy with brown hair asks if it's really that easy to get SS rank. Another player asks if S isn't the highest rank. Another player asks how he did it, and then adds that he read on the forum that getting talent is already very difficult. The protagonist looks at the system window with a satisfied expression. The dragon soaring 10,000 miles calls the protagonist via the system and says that he congratulates him. The main character thanks him. The main character sheaths his sword, and the interlocutor says that if he had not met him earlier, he would have suspected that he was an insider sent by the developers. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and he says that he is lucky. The dragon soaring 10,000 miles tells the protagonist not to be modest, because if there is any way to obtain a high-ranking talent from these trials, then he can tell him and he will fairly pay for this information. The main character thought that it would be okay if he told him. The main character replies that there is no particular way, and the only thing you can count on is your skills and class growth stars. He thought that even knowing the conditions, it was almost impossible to obtain an SS class talent. Firstly, it is very difficult for beginners to get strong enough skills and the ability to increase the chance of getting a higher ranking talent through a passive stat bonus. The protagonist imagines the man being enveloped in golden energy. He thought that secondly, it was necessary to have hidden class growth stars, and they were difficult to obtain. He imagines HP values with 6 stars and attack and defense with 5 stars. He thinks that thirdly, even if the players who could fulfill both of the first conditions were rich, they would still need to spend a huge amount of time and money. He adds that the first few +1 rewards have long been taken. The highest possible talent is S rank. Golden rays emanate from the sphere with the letter S. The protagonist receives a notification that the dragon soaring 10,000 miles has transferred 100,000 yuan to their bank account. Drops of sweat were running down the protagonist's face and he thought that this guy was rich. The interlocutor thanks the protagonist and says that he realized long ago that he could strengthen his overall power through passive skills, but he did not notice the growth star. He adds that the protagonist is really skilled at this. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and he thinks that 5 stars still feel much weaker, but an attack from 6 stars is a different matter. He answers the interlocutor that there is nothing of the kind and he only has 4 stars. A blue system announcement appears with the information that everyone who wants to complete hidden missions related to changing class, the starting price will be 7 figures, unique hidden classes from 8 figures. The price is negotiable. Sent by the dragon soaring 10,000 miles. The protagonist looks at the system window. He thought that the system was saying that they could indeed use advertisements that spread throughout the country and cost 100 gold coins at a time. He adds that the replenishment function is currently not working and gold coins are being sold at a sky-high price of 7,000 yuan per piece, and with this announcement the amount will go into the hundreds of thousands. The protagonist smiles and wonders if this is all because he told him that he has a full 4 stars. A guy with a beard from the protagonist's friends list sits on a rock with his arms crossed and says that it seems that the level of hidden class growth stars is really high. A drop of sweat runs down his cheek and he wondered if he was really trying to save face since he was talking about a full 4 stars. A gray-haired guy with the nickname Battle of the Tiger with the Dragon asks the leader if he knows the growth level of the stars of the unique hidden class. The guy with the goatee replies that the Winter River himself said that it was a full 4 stars. The gray-haired guy shouts and asks if it's 4 stars. The leader says that increasing the level of stars is important, and as they progress along the path of changing the 2nd and 3rd classes, the difference in power will only grow. Leaves fly through the air. The dragon says that he will do it step by step and at the moment he will not level up, because securing the hidden class is his priority, especially if it is a unique hidden class. Clouds fly across the gray sky. The gray-haired guy tells the leader that he will ask the brothers in the guild to help him gather information. After 1 hour in the gorge, a blue system notification appears with information that the mission to destroy the protagonist's wild mice has been completed and he can go to his mentor for a reward. The protagonist puts on a yellow stone breastplate and clenches his hands into fists, and then says that the mission is completed and his level has finally reached 20 and he can equip the equipment of the Lizard King. He adds that it is time to return to the teacher for a reward. The gray sky rises against the background of the castle. The protagonist approaches Danielle. The Necromancer with a surprised expression on his face shouts that the protagonist's attack has increased. An information window appears about the character of the level 20 protagonist. His HP is 25,000, attack is 750, defense is 155-160, reputation is 100, and luck is 1. The main character smiles with his eyes closed and says that he is lucky. He thought it best to keep his profile low. He adds that he doesn't know what his teacher will think if he finds out that he has acquired an SS rank talent. The Necromancer stands opposite the protagonist and thought that when he left, his attack was only no more than 200, and now, after several levels, it reached 750, which is already beyond his understanding. Daniel, with a joyful expression on his face, puts his hand forward and tells the protagonist that it looks like he has acquired a very good talent, and he will not insist since the protagonist does not want to tell. He asks him what equipment he wants. The main character, with surprise on his face, thought about what he wanted. He shouts and asks if he can really choose for himself. The Necromancer answers the protagonist that of course, because he, as his teacher, uses the resources of the Dark City to teach him. He adds that he is not going to deceive him. The main character shouts thanks to the teacher with a joyful expression on his face. The main character takes the sword in its sheath and tells the teacher that he actually has a pretty good weapon, but its required level is quite high. He asks if there is a way to lower it. The Necromancer takes the protagonist's sword. Daniel looks at the sword and says that now this weapon will suit the protagonist quite well. The main character is enveloped in a blue aura. A system notification appears, which informs the protagonist about the completion of the mission cleansing up the wild mice. Rewards received: experience plus 150,000, rank C item gift sphere. The main character is enveloped in powerful golden energy as he reaches level 21. Streams of blue energy fly near the blue sphere. A system window appears with information about the C rank gift sphere. Description: not a gift from God, but rather a sign of care from the teacher. Effect: reduces the required level for equipment of silver rank and below by 10 levels. The main character thanks the teacher with a joyful expression on his face. Danielle puts her hand forward and tells the protagonist to try. The main character squeezes the sphere and it breaks. A system notification appears, according to which the main character needs to select equipment in order to lower its required level. The main character has a glowing blue ball in his hand. He shouts out the name of his sword, Sword of the Mouse King. The sword is enveloped in blue streams of energy and an information window appears with information about it. The silver rank Mouse King sword has an attack of 6 to -80 and another plus 10%. Additional effect: attack speed plus 10%. Required level 15. The main character looks at the sword with a surprised expression on his face. The main character puts his hand forward with a yellow crystal in his hand. He tells the teacher that he wants to use the Orb of Blessing to improve the Mouse King's sword, and then asks if this is right. Danielle, with a look of surprise on her face, asks the protagonist where he got the Blessing Orb, and then adds that it is much more valuable than the Gift Orb. The main character, with a smile on his face, says that it is thanks to luck. Danielle says he thinks it's a good idea, then adds that there are different ranks of Blessing Orbs, and the quality of the one he has in his hands is quite low. He won't lose anything if he uses it on the Mouse King's sword. The main character says that's great, then he uses it. He squeezes the sphere and his hand is enveloped in golden streams of energy. A system notification appears with information that the protagonist needs to select the equipment that he wants to improve. Note: only equipment of silver rank and below is suitable. The main character puts his hand with the sword forward and says that this is the Sword of the Mouse King. A system window appears with information about the gold rank Mouse King sword, which gives an attack of 150 to -180. Effect: attack plus 15%, attack speed plus 20%. Additional effect: vampirism plus 10%. Required level 20. Description: using the Orb of Blessing, the rank of the Mouse King's sword was increased and it became sharper. Many golden streams of energy emanate from the sword in the protagonist's hand. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, holds a sword in two hands and shouts that gold is definitely better than silver. The protagonist sheathed the sword and says that the weapon's attack is simple, but after adding the attack percentage and the advantage of his talent, it is no longer just some 180 points. A blue system window appears, where it is written that the protagonist's power has reached a new level and he has reached the silver boss rank and his rank has been changed. The main character, with a surprised expression on his face, shouts that he is now a silver level boss. A system notification appears with information that his fallen rank has been changed to Dark Master, and his characteristics have been changed. A red system window appears with information about the characteristics of the protagonist at the time of level 21. He has 26,250 HP, 1157 to 1220 attack, 164 - 174 defense, reputation is 18,000, and luck is 1. The main character, with a smug smile on his face, says that with such an attack indicator he doubts that anyone will be able to kill him instantly. A system window with a golden frame appears, where it is written that the title Dark Master increases the final indicator and increases HP by 150%. The main character with a smile on his face thought that of course, it is quite logical that the protection of the demonic god would be like an endless resurrection. He adds that at the beginning, the demon god's defense does not show much strength, but when it reaches a certain level, it becomes more and more powerful. Daniel tells the protagonist that his talents and skills are not easy. The main character answers the teacher that everything is thanks to his instructions. Danielle closes her eyes and says that's true. The Necromancer tells the main character that now his attack is high enough, but his defense is too low. He adds that the protagonist's equipment is still too weak and he needs to do better to help the Dark City. The main character asks what he should do and thought that we were talking about the next thought. The Necromancer tells the protagonist that recently treacherous adventurers have appeared near the Dark City and he does not know their intentions. He adds that since they belong to the Light faction, they cannot allow them to return alive so easily. The Necromancer's eyes begin to glow blue and he tells the protagonist that he will go and kill them. He adds that the protagonist will thus contribute to the Dark City. A blue system notification appears whether he wants to accept the adventurer clearance mission with difficulty B. The main character clenches his hand into a fist and thought that the teacher would force him to fight other wild animals. But here we are talking about the players. He adds that killing players is great and experience is gained very quickly. It turns out a blue system window with an iron frame with information about the task Purge of Adventurers with difficulty B description. After joining the Dark faction, the adventurers in the world became enemies of the protagonists. Killing them is proof of loyalty to the Dark faction and the protagonist will also receive valuable rewards. Mission requirements: kill 500 adventurers. Reward unknown. The main character puts his hand forward and asks the teacher if he can give him a couple of elixirs. Daniel shakes his head in refusal and says that before he could give them to him for free as part of the reward for the task, but now he will have to bargain for them. He adds that as the protagonist's teacher, he can sell him potions at a 30% discount. The protagonist thanks his teacher with a joyful expression. A red system window appears with information about the healing elixir. Description: a precious medicine at such a high price that ordinary people cannot afford it. Effect: for 10 seconds after use, restores 500 HP every second. Cooldown: 30 seconds. Price: 35 silver coins. A red system window appears with information about the elixir of life. Description: on the verge of life and death, he can help you survive if you're lucky. Effect: for 10 seconds after application, 1000 HP will be restored every second. Cooldown: 30 seconds. Price: 70 silver coins. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and he thought that this is so expensive. Even with a 30% discount on the elixir of life, it still costs as much as 70 silver coins, which means that the original price is more than a gold coin. The main character opens his inventory, which contains 5 gold coins, 70 silver and 10 bronze. He thought that this was not the sale of elixir, but simply robbery. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek and he says that he wants 4 elixirs of life, 4 healing ones. The main character walks outside the city. He noticed something. A red dragon flies in the sky. The dragon has a rider with brown hair tied in a ponytail. The dragon asks the rider what he noticed and calls him master. The man with brown hair closes his eyes and says that he just felt an extremely dark aura that disappeared in the blink of an eye. But usually such powerful demons don't appear here, and apparently it's just an illusion. The dragon asks the master if he wants to go back and check. The master replies that the mission is more important and if the demons are really here, even if he can defeat them, it will be difficult to contain them. He adds that he shouldn't waste time. The main character looks at the monster and says that it would be so cool to ride a dragon, but such a chance can only come to players in the last stages of the game. Someone is watching the protagonist from around the corner. A man wearing a half-face mask with the system window open says that he is too close and was discovered. Master of Deception, aspiring thief. Drops of sweat are running down his face and he is trying to say that something is wrong with the Winter River. His interlocutor asks what happened to him. The masked guy reports that he has definitely become a silver level boss. The main character props his chin up and laughs, and then says that this brat doesn't understand how he can be the boss. He adds that he wonders what he will choose. The main character looks towards the guy in the mask and asks him why he is pursuing him, and then calls him a stupid adventurer. The masked guy thought about what the protagonist called him, and then wondered if their titles were really that different. The Master of Deception thought with concern on his face that suddenly this meant that this Winter River might be an NPC and his name just looked like a player. He thinks that this cannot be. because NPCs do not receive rewards for killing players, and he was able to post the same video that went viral. He wonders how he can be an NPC. He points his finger at the protagonist and asks what he is trying to do. With an angry expression on his face, he shouts to the protagonist that the reward for killing him will drive anyone crazy. The main character tells the guy in the mask to attack and says that he will die if he retreats even one step. He slashes with his sword and deals 11,998 damage. The Master of Deception receives a system notification with the information that he was killed by a normal attack from the silver level boss Dark Master, Winter River, and lost 11,998 HP. He shouts that this is just the beginning of the game, and then asks how it is possible to deal more than 10,000 damage. With a worried look on his face, he opens the system window and asks if it was just a regular attack. The interlocutor asks to send out the coordinates of this player. The guy with the mask agrees and adds that you need to be careful because he was defeated with one blow, so his strength is more than 10,000. In the voice chat, someone asks how this is possible. Another person says that the highest attack power in their guild is 176, and even if he received a god-level item, he cannot have 10,000 attack. Another interlocutor says that if this comes to light, then many guilds will pull together their forces and no one cares that he is a silver rank, because he has no chance even if he is a gold rank. The main character stands with concern on his face near the blue distortions in space that appeared in the place of the defeated player. He runs away and thought that the others shouldn't get caught, because after all, he is quite valuable and there will definitely be players who will try to kill him. He runs out of the gorge and thought that although they are not so stupid as to give out scrolls with forbidden curses to adventurers, like the original inhabitants here in Brandy, there is a small chance that such an item will fall into the hands of someone, and if he decides to use it on, he's a corpse. 10 minutes later, there is a lot of smoke in front of the protagonist. There are many players standing among the smoke. The main character, with a smile on his face, thought that it didn't matter if he didn't fight everyone at once. He'd be fine. He adds that for a group of adventurers who haven't even passed the talent test yet, defeating him is almost impossible. Many players are standing in the gorge. A man with brown hair with stubble is called Sharp Blade, a fierce storm. He asks the Master of Deception where he is. The guy in the mask says that he probably ran away, because this is the same place where he was killed 10 minutes ago. Sharp Blade commands everyone to start searching, and then says that no matter how, they must capture Winter River. His subordinates agree with him. Many players are exploring the area around. Someone reports via voice chat that he killed them with one blow at coordinates 7,847,548. A brown-haired guy with stubble looks to the side. He starts running and shouts to his brothers to get ready. Sharp Blade sees the defeated warrior and asks where he went. Someone reports via voice communication that he is here, at these coordinates, and his attack power is too high. He adds that each swing of his sword deals over 10,000 damage. The leader of the group clenched his teeth in anger and shouted that it was like they were playing cat and mouse. He thought that he did not expect the Eternity map to be so large, because one dark city and the towns nearby could accommodate more than 10,000 players. He thinks that even though the game is about 4-5 days old, most of the players are still stuck in the beginner village, and it was unrealistic to mobilize tens of thousands of people to find one player. Someone via voice communication reports that the protagonist has moved again. Sharp Blade has a worried expression on his face. One of the players via voice communication asks how a player at an early level could inflict 10,000 damage in one blow, because even a monster with several tens of thousands of HP will die in a few seconds. Another player reports that this guy is definitely a cheater. The players stand silently. Someone on the voicemail says it's too dangerous and they need to go back because they lost. Sharp Blade thought that in order to meet the Winter River, he spent money on special items that could weaken and slow down the enemy for 10 minutes. Beads of sweat run down the group leader's face. He thought that, however, this guy was killing them one by one without using any items, and as a result the guild was suffering heavy losses. He adds that they have sacrificed so much and will not even be able to defeat the Winter River. The protagonist makes a slashing attack on the player. A system notification appears with information that the protagonist's level is increasing to 22. He is enveloped in golden energy, and then he says that killing players increases the level very quickly. A system notification appears where it says that the protagonist has already killed 500 adventurers for the task Clearing Adventurers of Rank B. The main character clicks on the system window and says that he has completed the mission. It's time to receive rewards. A golden notification appears saying that the Light faction has noticed hundreds of deaths of adventurers near the Dark City. They began to make plans, and in a week they would return the City of Light, which rightfully belongs to them. The main character looks at this notification. Many players look at the notification that appears. The main character, with concern on his face, thought that there really would be a battle for the city. Battle for the city. Undoubtedly, this will be the first large-scale event in the game since its release. Many players are standing near the fortress. This will be a test of the cooperation and organizational abilities of the entire guild. Gathering a large number of players and launching a large-scale attack on a city is not an easy task. A purple notice appears in front of the protagonist, where it is written that he, being the boss, standing in third place in the line of defense against the troops of the Light faction. If he is absent during the battle, his level will be lowered by 10, and his characteristics will forever be set to -1000. The protagonist has a surprised expression on his face. 2 drops of sweat flow down his face, and he thought that of course he was glad that there would be a battle. But did he really have to become one of the 3 bosses protecting the city? With his eyes wide open, he says that this is a terrible situation, and usually in large-scale events the Light faction wins, and even if he wanted to fight back, he does not have enough endurance to do so. Against the backdrop of the City of Darkness is a huge moon. The protagonist thought that the City of Darkness is the main city of the first level, so the Light faction can send even more strong NPCs. Clouds float against the backdrop of the city tower. The Necromancer tells the main character that he understands the current situation. Daniel says with concern on his face that he didn't expect that he would be involved in Tianheng's affairs. The main character, with an alarmed expression on his face, wonders whether the NPC should say this, and then adds that he is clearly not chatting according to the rules of the game. The Necromancer puts his hand on the protagonist's shoulder, and then tells him that his teacher will not let him be offended, and when the time comes, he will send help and help overcome the restriction of the rules, and then teleport him. The main character asks the Necromancer what about him. Daniel says that he is a Necromancer and is not afraid of death, and his mission is completed. He adds that death will be a kind of liberation for him. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek as he thought about the mission. The Necromancer moved his hands behind his back and said that in the future he will understand that there is no need to worry about him. The main character is silent with concern on his face. Daniel sighs and says that he will solve problems as they arise. He tells the main character that he sees from him that the mission he gave is completed, and then asks what reward he wants. Winter River says she wants a pair of matching boots. A blue system window appears congratulating you on completing the Adventurer Cleanup mission. Rewards: experience plus 20,000, silver rank equipment, boots of speed. Blue energy is concentrated in the Necromancer's hand. Gray silver rank speed boots appear, which provide 15-18 defense, 800 HP, and plus 8% movement speed. Required level 22. Description: a pair of boots with speed runes carved into them. They keep you warm in winter and cool in summer, allowing you to move quickly. The main character, with a joyful expression on his face, thought that he had obtained another silver rank equipment. He puts on his boots and says that he has just reached the required level, so he will also put on the equipment from the Mouse King. A window appears with information about the protagonist at level 22. He has 36,720 HP, 1170 to 1233 attack, 232-252 defense, 18,000 reputation, and 1 luck. Description: fallen traitor to the Light faction. The pride of his teacher, the Necromancer Daniel. Having received into his hands a power inaccessible to ordinary adventurers, he became one of the bosses of the City of Darkness. His fate is unclear. He thought that although the attack had not changed much, before this he only had bronze rank black iron bracers. He adds that most of his equipment is now silver tier, and with 5-star growth in defense, he will become a tank. Casuals won't even be able to break through his defense. The main character asks the teacher if he needs to do something else for him. Daniel rests his chin and thinks. The Necromancer tells the protagonist that he is a dark swordsman with incredible talent, and of course, he will learn powerful skills naturally as he becomes stronger. But sooner or later he will have to learn the basics. Danielle puts her hand with a scroll forward and says that this is a letter of recommendation with which the protagonist will need to go to the Swamps of Ghosts and find an undead swordsman there. He adds that he is sure he will teach him some powerful techniques. The main character takes the letter and tells the teacher that he thanks him. A blue system notification appears informing you that the protagonist has received the Undead Swordsman mission with difficulty C. Description: A mysterious undead swordsman lives in the swamps of ghosts. Originally raised by Daniel, his power during life led to him gaining consciousness and becoming the ruler of the ghost swamp. Mission requirements: you need to go to the swamps of ghosts and deliver Daniel's letter to the undead swordsman. The main character asks the teacher where the swamp of ghosts is, since the game doesn't mark any information on the map and instead requires players to explore everything on their own. The way members of the Dark faction travel around the world is no different from the Light faction. Daniel points to the side and tells the protagonist to keep going north, and then he will get there. The main character thanks the teacher. The protagonist goes beyond the City of Darkness. He is walking across the field. He notices something. A notification appears that the main character has entered the Swamp of Ghosts location. He sees a pond in front of him near which blue lights are flying. The crescent moon rises in the sky. The main character notices several silhouettes. Several rotting corpses are walking around the pond. A blue system window appears with information about the common monster rotting corpse of unknown level. They have 80,000 HP, 250 - 260 attack, and an unknown amount of defense. Skills: Bite and Rip, Fury. Description: the bodies of those killed in the Swamp of Ghosts become wandering corpses under the influence of a powerful aura of hatred. They hate all living things and treat creatures that harbor life as mortal enemies. The main character thought that he could not determine their level and defense, which means that these monsters are at least level 28. But he sees the rest of the characteristics, because the difference in strength between them is small. Rotting corpses notice the protagonist and scream. They run towards the main character. The protagonist runs towards them. He kicks the rotting corpse in the head. He hits the enemy multiple times, dealing 17,586, 8175, 8866, and then 11,233 damage. The rotting corpse bit the protagonist on the arm and dealt him 214 damage. The main character looks at the zombies and thought that since he raised his defense to 252, these rotten corpses should not pose much of a threat. The system congratulates the protagonist for successfully killing the rotting corpses and receiving 6536. Behind the main character lie 3 defeated monsters. He says that they are not particularly strong, and the XP flows well. He adds that now he needs 280,000 experience points to get up, which means a little less than 300 rotten corpses will be enough. The main character runs towards 4 more rotten corpses and exclaims that he will farm experience for them. After half an hour, the main character is enveloped in golden energy and several defeated monsters lie next to him. The system informs the protagonist that he has reached level 23. The main character looks to the side and asks where this undead swordsman is. He hits a tree with his sword. He says that even though he left marks along the way, the location is so huge that it is still difficult to find this swordsman. The protagonist opens his eyes wide. He says that he understood everything wrong, because the mission said that the undead swordsman is intelligent. A purple system window with an iron frame appears, where information about the task is written. The main character sighs. He shouts to the undead swordsman that he has come to search for him from Daniel. Someone asks the protagonist if he came to find him. The main character turns around. A man with long purple hair and a sword with a purple blade is sitting on a stone. One of his eyes glows purple and the other is covered with bangs. He asks why Daniel needs this. The main character looks at the undead swordsman and thought that no one was there just now, and then wonders when he appeared. The main character, with concern on his face, thought that this man was strong and he needed to be more careful. He puts forward his hand with the letter and tells the swordsman that the teacher conveyed the explanation in the letter. The undead swordsman rises from the stone. He approaches the protagonist. He unfolds the letter, and the protagonist thought that the swordsman was fast. The undead swordsman says that he understands everything. He says that he thought where the main man got his evil aura from, but he turns out to be a dark swordsman. He adds that this world drowned in chaos, the faction of light created many heroes, and myriads of natures arose again, foreshadowing an evil fate. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek. The swordsman tells the protagonist that Daniel wants him to teach him several undead fencing techniques. He adds that, however, he is bound by the rules of this place and if the main character wants to learn, he must first complete the tasks. The main character, with a look of surprise on his face, wonders if the undead swordsman is bound by the rules of this place. The protagonist thought that it seemed that the original inhabitants of this place fully understood the so-called process, which was completely unthinkable for an NPC. The planet breaks into two parts. The main character wonders if the Eternity developers are not at all afraid that NPCs might do something unplanned and destroy the whole world. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and he thinks that their understanding of the rules is really another special parameter. He asks the undead swordsman what he thinks about these rules. The long-haired guy closes his eyes and says that rules are rules, and since they exist, they have no choice but to obey, and even 10 great demon gods cannot break them. The main character, eyes wide open, asks the swordsman if this really means that he tried to break them. The long-haired guy looks down and says he's afraid that before he even tries, the rules will end him. He adds that it is too early to talk about this, and then tells the protagonist that he himself will be able to find the answers when he becomes a dark swordsman of legendary power. The long-haired guy sends a request to the protagonist and tells him to go and kill some rotting corpses to prove that he is worthy of becoming his student. The blue system window asks the protagonist if he wants to accept the Prove Your Strength mission. The main character accepts the mission. A purple system window with an iron frame appears, where it is written about the task Prove Your Strength with difficulty B description. Being a person of legendary power, the undead swordsman Churl needs the main character to prove that he is worthy to become his student and learn how to kill others. Mission requirements: kill 1,000 rotting corpses. The main character, with concern on his face, asks whether it is really necessary to kill 1,000. Churl stands in front of the protagonist and tells him that his attack level is good, but overall he is too weak and needs training. He adds that if the protagonist fails, he may not count on training. The protagonist agrees with the swordsman. The undead swordsman is engulfed in smoke and tells the protagonist to call him by name when he's finished. The smoke near the main character disappears and he asks if this guy is always so strange. He says it's already 11 in the evening, but he must become stronger to cope with the approaching siege of the city. He walks along the pond and says that then he simply won't sleep. Rotten corpses growl and run towards the protagonist. The main character swings his sword. He pierced one of the enemies through. A system window appears, according to which the protagonist has killed 1 out of 1,000 rotting corpses. The protagonist kills the zombie with lightning speed with a sword and runs behind him. A notification appears with information that the main character has killed 7 out of 1,000 rotting corpses. He strikes with a sword that emits purple energy and kills 9 out of 1,000 enemies. He leaves behind several killed enemies and attacks 3 more rotting corpses. A blue notification appears stating that he has killed 486 out of 1,000 enemies. A staff with a blue ball on its top appears in front of the main character. He takes it in his hand and says that he got a level 30 bronze staff and notes that, as always, he gets great things. He adds that they should give him a good price. 5 hours later, the protagonist hits several enemies with 1 blow. A system notification appears congratulating the protagonist for completing the Prove Your Strength mission, and informing about the reward that he can receive from the undead swordsman. He exhales with a smile on his face and says that he is finally finished and he is only 5% away from the next level. A system notification appears informing you that the concealment spell cast by the Necromancer Danielle has ended. The main character's skin turns black. He is enveloped in violet energy. Churl says this is the original appearance of a dark swordsman. He goes to the protagonist. Winter River with a smile on her face tells the undead swordsman that he has completed the task. The undead swordsman points his finger at the protagonist and tells him that he has been watching him and all he can say is that his attack is superior to all others at this level. He adds that there are no number of rotting corpses that will test him. A purple system notification appears with congratulations on completing the Prove Your Strength mission. He receives plus 200,000 experience and the right to become a Churl student. The protagonist's level increases to level 26. A golden glow envelops him. The long-haired guy says there's no need to call him Mr., it's too formal. He says that he will teach the protagonist since Danielle himself asked for it and now he can consider him his teacher. The protagonist calls the swordsman a teacher. The purple-haired man puts his hand forward and it glows purple. He tells the protagonist not to expect too much because he is so weak that he will not be able to learn much. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, thought it was time to choose a skill. Many icons appear in front of the protagonist. There are icons with a clawed paw, a dagger, a dark male silhouette, a muscular arm, and a skull. The main character looks at the icons and thought that there are so many abilities. He scrolled through the icons and thought that all the abilities were unique and high level, learned by Churl as an undead swordsman. A blue system window appears, where it is written about the sinister solution of rank S description, a skill learned by the undead swordsman Churl in confrontation with the Light faction. particularly effective against groups of infantry. Effect: instantly kills targets 10 levels below the user. Recharge 1 minute. Required level 55. Price 1,000 gold coins. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek, and he thought that this skill is powerful. But not only does it have high level requirements, but he will also have to spend gold. A system window appears with the Dark Shroud skill S rank. Effect: covers an area with an evil aura, significantly weakening all enemies within it. Required level 50. Price 600 gold coins. Scrolling through a lot of icons, the main character thought that he only had 6 gold coins, and then asked if there was any talent at all that was available to him. A blue system window appears with information about the SS-Ranked descent. Effect: moves to any place under the control of the Dark Faction. Required level 99. Price 99,999 gold coins. The main character took a closer look at one of the skills. The main character thought that he had finally found the skills available to him. An icon appears with a hand that is shrouded in purple energy and grabs the person from a distance. A blue system notification appears with information about rank Undead Grasp. Description: this manipulation technique was developed by the undead swordsman Churl based on his skills in life, causing the effect to be unpredictable. Effect: activates internal energy and immobilizes one enemy within 10 meters for 3 seconds. Cooldown 1 minute. Required level 25. Price 2 gold coins. An icon appears with a wave of a purple sword behind which purple energy appears. A blue system window appears with a rank B necro swing. Description: an attack method unique to an undead swordsman. Effect: deals damage equal to 250% of the enemy's attack power, and reduces their speed by 10% for 2 seconds. Cooldown 15 seconds. Price 1 gold coin. The main character presses his finger on the system window and says that although they are not as impressive as some of those skills, both are top-notch for the initial stage of the game. 2 red system notifications appear according to which the protagonist has successfully mastered the skills Grasp of the Undead and Necro Swing. Churl puts his hand forward and tells the protagonist that this is all he can teach him for now. He adds that he can come back when he becomes stronger and he will show him new techniques. The main character asks the teacher when he will become strong enough. The undead swordsman put his hand on his belt and said that when the power of the dark swordsman begins to overwhelmingly overwhelm him from within, at that moment he will be able to grasp new methods. The main character thought that if he remembered correctly, he received a dark reincarnation at level 50, and then asks if this means that he will need to come back when he is at 50 again. The main character bows a little and tells the teacher that he will not take up even more of his time. The main character takes off his virtual reality helmet and sighs, and then says that it's already 3 in the morning and he should get some sleep if he values his life. The bright sun illuminates multi-story buildings. The main character is sleeping in bed, and next to him lies a smartphone that starts playing a ringtone. He takes out his smartphone and answers the call. Wang Kai asks the protagonist if he really sleeps when it's day outside. The main character replies that he went to bed late, and then asks what happened. A friend from the university asks the protagonist if he heard that yesterday a huge event was announced through the system. There are packages of food on the table. The main character yawns and says that he knows about the siege. Wang Kai asks the main character if he will fit into the mess, and then adds that the rewards for the siege are decent and players in the top will even be able to get gold rank equipment and very rare items. The main character asks where he saw the information about the rewards for the event. The protagonist's friend stands on the balcony and replies that the system did not announce this and he received the information through closed channels. The main character asks the guy if he really wants to say that he won't have problems because of this. Wang Kai replies that he did not sign non-disclosure agreements, so he tells whoever he wants. He tells the protagonist to check it out himself, and then says that in general, just for participation and relaxed fights against small monsters, points will already be good. The main character turns on his left side and closes his eyes. He suddenly opens his eyes when he thought about the awards. With an inspired expression on his face, he shouts that he has a plan. Wang Kai asks the protagonist what kind of plan he has. The protagonist with a smile on his face says that as soon as everything works out, he will treat him. The main character's friend asks him to say what he is talking about. The main character folds his lips and says, "Smack." Wang Kai stands silently on the balcony. With a dissatisfied expression on his face, he reports that he is actually a guy. The main character appears near a pond. He starts running and says that we can't waste a minute. We need to hurry up to discuss strategies with the teacher. A crescent moon rises in the sky. The main character stands behind the Necromancer and tells him that he has a plan that can be effective against the Light faction, and then adds that this is a plan to protect the main city. Danielle is holding a purple potion in her hand. He turns to the protagonist and says that he will listen. The main character props his chin and tells the teacher that, as he knows, adventurers do not like to be commanded, and even though they arrived on the Tianheng continent as representatives of the Light faction, there are many like him. He adds that whoever they represent, light or dark, does not limit their actions as adventurers. The Necromancer is about to say what the main character is proposing, but the guy interrupts him. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, says that where there is a significant reward, there will be daredevils. He adds that the Light faction has always underestimated the adventurers, even treating them with anger and contempt, so it is necessary to turn the situation around and lure the adventurers to the side of the Dark faction. He asks Danielle what he thinks about it. The protagonist thought that from the very first village he experienced hostility towards adventurers from the locals. Many players are irritated by this. He adds that he's willing to bet that not too few of them will want to play against the main plot. He imagines 3 disgruntled players. The Necromancer tells the protagonist that he is simplifying everything too much, because you cannot join the Dark faction simply because you want to. The main character raises his finger up and says that it doesn't matter, that they won't be able to join and they just need to offer a more tempting reward. Danielle asks if this will work, and the main character answers yes. The main character says that he wants to say something else. The Necromancer asks with a surprised look what we are talking about. The main character puts his hand forward and says that the reward for first place should be especially generous, and the Necromancer asks which one, for example. The main character smiles and says that only first place will get a chance to join the Dark faction. Danielle reports that, as he said, joining the Dark faction is not as easy as he thinks. He adds that he initially had to invite him for his own safety, and he shouldn't think that his strength is only at the Dark Gold level. The protagonist asks the Necromancer if he has reached the level of the Spirit. Danielle coughs and says that not really, and he meant that in the past his power was not only at the level of Dark Gold. He tells the protagonist not to ask for details, but in short, adventurers cannot just decide to join the Dark faction. He adds that once they accepted the protection of the Goddess of Life, they became obliged to fight for the Light faction. This is an inviolable contract. The main character, with a smile on his face, says that it's good, but this does not mean that the reward for first place cannot be joining the faction. Danielle's eyes begin to glow blue. He calls the protagonist a smart boy, and then adds that if he takes first place, the so-called entry reward is nothing more than an empty promise. The main character, with a smug smile, says that yes, it is so. Danielle tells the main character that he came up with such a sneaky trick, and then adds that the protagonist is truly his student. The main character, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, thought that he would call this an incredible cunning. Danielle puts his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and tells him that then they will act on his advice, and although their acquaintance was not particularly pleasant, he recognizes him as his student. A blue system notification appears with information that the City of Darkness is under pressure from the Light faction, and a decision has been made to recruit adventurers who want to leave the light in the name of darkness. He adds that interested adventurers can register with the Undead Knight NPC Cantor outside the City of Darkness. Coordinates 7845.484. The notification appears for many players. A system notification appears with information that the rating tables for scoring points for the siege and defense of the city are open, and you can look at the rewards. The main character presses his finger on the system window and thought it was interesting. Another blue system window appears, where it is written what the players will get. First place, joining the Dark faction and obtaining a secret class, Undead Swordsman. Second place, a random Dark Gold grade equipment item and 1S rank rare item. Third place, 2 random pieces of gold rank equipment. The main character thought, great, with a satisfied expression on his face. He clicks on the system window and thought that he should post it and see how people react. In 1 minute, Winter River left a message where he wrote that no one would really want to join the Dark faction. A random overlord with an avatar depicting a drawn cat asks who wouldn't want it and adds that only those who got hit in the head with a donkey's hoof. A mercenary who stands in gold coins with a man in a helmet on his avatar writes that joining the Dark faction will put a reward on your head, and then you can give yourself up and immediately become a billionaire, although there will definitely be consequences. He asks what difference it makes, and then writes that in the game money is the most important thing. A relationship expert with an avatar of a guy wearing a half-face mask writes to the protagonist that sooner or later he will finish him off. The governor of Denyang with an avatar depicting a cute animal writes that these rewards are much cooler than what the faction of Light offers. A guy with the nickname No Money for Food writes that he is leaving the Light faction and will go straight to the Dark ones. The main character asks the teacher if he can update the magic of concealment on him. Daniel puts forward his hand from which blue energy emanates and says that he would have done it anyway, even if the protagonist had not asked him to do it. He adds that given the current strength of the protagonist, only if he catches the eye of someone powerful, death is guaranteed. Blue energy from the Necromancer's hand envelops the protagonist. The protagonist receives a purple notification with information that his teacher, the Necromancer Daniel, cast concealment magic on him, which returned him to his human form for 1 month. The main character looks at his hand, which has become normal, and says that the duration has increased. The Necromancer holds blue energy in 2 fingers and says that his strength has increased and his wounds have been healed, so naturally his concealment magic will last longer. He directs his pupils at the protagonist and asks him if he met Churl. The main character replies that yes, he learned 2 skills. Why did he say that he would return to training when he became strong enough? Daniel, with his eyes closed, says that this is good and, apparently, he really is not going to return to the faction of Light. How can he help him? The main character asks again about the mention of return. He thought that the Necromancer really wanted to say that Churl used to be in the Light faction. Daniel tells the protagonist that the undead swordsman is powerful, and he already mentioned in the letter that if he dies one day, he will become the protagonist's next teacher. The main character has a surprised expression on his face. The Necromancer with a serious expression on his face says that there is no need to pretend to be surprised, because if the protagonist follows him, he will not go far, and for him death is not the end of the road. He asks the protagonist to remember that if he dies one day, then there is no need to mourn him, because if the protagonist lasts long enough on this earth, they will meet again. The main character, with a surprised expression on his face, says that it seems that the teacher's true identity is incredible, since he is able to resurrect after death. Daniel points 2 fingers at the protagonist and tells him that a necromancer is not someone you can just become. He adds that the protagonist is still too weak, so he needs to go and become stronger. He adds that he hopes that when all the points are tallied, the protagonist will be undisputedly first. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek and wonders if this means that his abilities will be tested in the siege of the city. A system notification appears with information that the protagonist has received the mission caused trouble. A red system window with a golden frame appears, containing information about the task. Bring confusion with difficulty S description. Since the plan was proposed by the protagonist, the payment for the defeat must also be borne by him. Requirements: you must take first place in the city defense rating table. The reward for the mission is unknown. Penalty for failure: loss of the protection of the demonic gods. The main character thought that apparently this mission was automatically given to the players by the system, and not personally by the teacher. Obviously, the system won't just sit back and watch him disrupt the main plot with impunity. The main character agrees to the terms of the task. A system window appears in front of the protagonist with information about the task: destroy the enemy camp with difficulty B description. In the southeast of the City of Darkness there is a camp of the Light faction. According to intelligence reports, they plan to attack the city with part of their forces. It is necessary to destroy them in order to relieve pressure on the city's defenders. Requirements: you must clear the human army and kill the camp boss. The protagonist thought that this was a mission given to Daniel. The Necromancer tells the main character that he was hardened after coming to the City of Darkness, and now the difficulty needs to be increased somewhat so that there is some tension. He adds that he hopes that the main character will not disappoint him and disgrace the name of the Dark Swordsman. The main character agrees with the teacher's words. The main character walks outside the city. The sun is shining brightly in the sky. System notification: the protagonist has entered the Radiant Forest location. The main character walks along the path. He sees a camp with guards standing at the entrance. The main character looks at a guard in plate armor with a spear. A system window appears with information about the regular monster, the soldier of the stars and the moon. His HP is 100,000. Attack is unknown. Defense is 250 minus 280. Skills: combo attack, critical strike, star formation. Description: elite warriors sent to the Radiant Forest by Star Nebula City. They are strong and well-trained, a unit of the army attacking the City of Darkness. A drop of sweat runs down the main character's cheek and he thought that the fact that there are no higher-level reconnaissance methods is really a shame. He adds that novice scouting skills can only distinguish the attributes of creatures 5 levels above their own, and as the player progresses beyond the novice stage, this is increasingly lacking. The protagonist moves behind the guard and thought that he would start with those who were standing alone. The guard notices the protagonist. The main character uses the undead's grip on a soldier. System notification: the main character used the undead grasp skill and bound the star and moon soldier for 1 second. The main character attacks the soldier with a sword using the Necro Swing skill, causing 24,765 damage and reducing his movement speed by 10%. The soldier shouts that the enemy is attacking. He asks the others to come here quickly, but the main character makes a dash. The protagonist makes 2 sword strikes and shouts to the enemy to die. He stands over the defeated enemy and says that Necro Swing, combined with the damage from insanity and grasp of the undead for control, is simply unbeatable. Many guards appear and one of them shouts that the enemy is here. The main character runs away and thought that it was better to get away quickly, because who knows what kind of cool boss is inside. The soldiers run to the protagonist and one of them asks where the general is and adds that he needs to be called. Another soldier says that the lord went off to play with his concubine. The main character turns his head to the soldiers. He stops. He calls the soldiers a bunch of ants with a smile on his face. The soldiers run towards the protagonist and use the star formation skill, which gives attack power plus 15%. The main character makes a jump and asks who cares that their attack has increased, and then adds that it's just a pack of bugs. The main character hits the soldier and receives 11,236 experience for killing him. He slashes another soldier and gains 11,239 experience for killing him. In 10 minutes, near the protagonist lie many defeated soldiers. He picks up a few coins and says that he thought there would be at least several hundred soldiers here, but it turned out there were only 20 or 30 of them. Someone shouts loudly and asks who did this. The main character looks in the direction where the voice came from. In front of him stands a muscular man with a scar on his cheek and an axe behind his back. In front of the protagonist are a commander with 2 axes and a woman in red clothes. The captain makes an angry expression on his face. A golden system window appears with information about Star and Moon General Kinton, a silver rank boss of an unknown level. His HP is 250,000 and his attack, defense and skills are unknown. Description: Star Nebula City's most famous warrior, Kinton, was once a paragon of strength, but is now losing power and self-indulgent. Rumor has it that he finds pleasure in specific outdoor activities. The protagonist with a worried expression on his face thought that he only saw the amount of HP and the description. He adds that his intelligence skills are becoming less and less effective. The man with 2 axes tells Winter River that he recognizes his abilities because he defeated his soldiers. The main character asks Kinton if they know each other. The general with a malicious smile says that the main character is far from unknown in the Light faction and a reward has been assigned for him. He tells the protagonist that if he gets his head, he will receive a unique combat class, which will significantly add to his power and ensure a limitless future. He adds that once he kills the protagonist, he will bathe in endless gold and glory, and then he will be able to take any beautiful woman for himself. The main character scratches the skin near his nose and tells the general that he doubts that he will last even a minute with a beautiful woman. The general shouts to the protagonist that with these words he is asking for death. He strikes with an axe. The main character jumped back and dodged the general's attack. He kicks him in the head and deals 11,571 damage. System notification: the protagonist used the Devil's Trampling skill and dealt 11,571 damage to the enemy. But due to the large difference in level, the suppression effect did not work. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek. Kinton hits the protagonist twice with axes and deals first 3580 units of damage, and then 4214. The main character with pain on his face thought that although his attack level is high, his defense and health are less than that of the enemy. The general approached the protagonist. The main character makes a cutting blow with a sword on a man. Kinton, with a smile on his face, shouts to the protagonist that it was an impressive move. The general swings his axe and shouts to the protagonist that they will fight for pleasure. He performs a slash on the protagonist. A girl in red clothes peeks out from behind a tree and addresses the general. The main character has less than half his health left, and a drop of sweat runs down his face. The main character thought that the time had come and drank another health potion. He recovers 3,000 health and extends his arm forward. A blue system notification appears with information that the main character has used the Grasp of the Undead skill, and therefore the enemy is bound for 0.8 seconds. The general is enveloped in purple energy. The main character makes a dash towards the enemy. He jumps and kicks Kinton. According to the system notification, he used the Devil Trampling skill and dealt 11,560 damage to the enemy. The general, with an angry expression on his face, shouts at the protagonist that his attempts to control him are completely ineffective, and then asks whether he really wants to disgrace himself so much. A system notification appears informing you that after using the Devil's Trampling skill, the protagonist's movement speed is increased by 200%. The main character runs away from the general. Kinton looks at the protagonist's back and says that he is fast. A girl in red clothes asks the general if he is okay. Kinton tells the girl that everything is fine, but it's a pity that he ran away. The main character appears behind the general. He holds the sword on his shoulder with a smile on his face and says that he will not run anymore, and adds that if the general wants a fight, then there will be a fight. The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought that the recovery effect from the potion, allowing him to avoid death in battle, was 0.5% of HP per second. He adds that this effect is not a joke at all. The general swings his axe and tells the protagonist that he really dared to return. 2 minutes later, General Kinton punches the main character and hits his chest plate. The protagonist envelops the general in purple energy using Grasp of the Undead. He kicks the enemy in the head. The protagonist hides behind a tree and restores his health. Kinton looks around and says that this treacherous guy has absolutely no fighting manners. The girl in red clothes tells the general that maybe they should go. The general tells the girl that it's worth it, because this is not a place where you should waste a lot of time. The main character comes out from behind the tree and moves his sword to the side, and then asks the general if he really wants to leave. The main character, with a malicious smile on his face, tells the general that he is a disgrace, because he was going to skedaddle since he could not win. The general shouts and asks the protagonist how he dares to speak like that with a serious look. The main character asks why he wouldn't say that. The general asks the protagonist if he's the one who's constantly running away. The main character makes a dash and shouts to Kinton that he appreciated his skills so much, so he couldn't help but show off. He adds that today they will fight to the death and one of them will die. The general hits with axes many times and shouts that he can't wait. The general spins into a tornado and many blows hit the protagonist. He deals 4781, 4877 and 4984 damage. The main character thought that the silver rank boss was really impressive and then drank a healing potion. The main character runs back and thought that he would wait until his skills finished working, and then he would counterattack. The general is breathing heavily, and drops of sweat are running down his face. The main character jumped on the general and is preparing to strike with his sword from top to bottom. The main character hit the general and dealt him 11,350 damage. The general, with a small amount of health, holds onto his hand and asks the main character why his stamina does not end. The main character, with an arrogant expression on his face, asks if he even has something like endurance. He attacks the general and smashes him with his axe. System notification. The system congratulates the protagonist for defeating the level 35 silver rank light faction boss, General of the Stars and Moon Kinton. The protagonist receives experience plus 600,000 and reputation plus 15,000. The protagonist's level has risen to 28. He is enveloped in golden energy. The system notification appears congratulating the protagonist on completing the Destroy the Enemy Camp quest and can now head to his teacher, the Necromancer Daniel, to receive his reward. The main character looks at the defeated enemy and says that he will see what things fell out. He reports that in addition to the equipment, 2 more gold coins fell. On the ground are armor, an axe and 2 gold coins. A pink and white system window appears with information about the silver rank rock armor, which gives 6 to -80 and plus 15% defense, 2000 HP. Required level 35. Description: Kinton's favorite armor. It is heavy, durable and quite distinguished by its protection parameter. He wears it every time he goes into battle. A pink and white system window appears with information about the silver rank thunder axe, which gives 100-120 and plus 10% attack, and also reduces attack speed by 10%. Required level 35. Description: This weapon accompanies Kinton on the battlefield. The tip of the axe is covered in the blood of an innumerable number of people, but due to its heaviness it is difficult to wield. The main character, with a smile on his face, says that the characteristics of the armor are great, but the weapon requires a high level, and is still not as powerful as his gold rank Mouse King sword, and then adds that you can just sell it. The main character opens the system window and tells the interlocutor that new equipment has appeared. The dragon soaring at 10,000 miles says that this weapon is level 35, and then adds that as far as he knows, the strongest among the players is so far at 23. The main character says if only it fits, and then thought that after he went over to the dark side faction, he has lost access to the storage functionality, so the equipment must be sold immediately. He adds that otherwise, if he makes a mistake and dies, the things will evaporate along with the character. The interlocutor names the price at 150,000 and the main character at 200,000, after which the player with stubble agrees. The sun is shining among the treetops. The main character says that he will send the coordinates and then asks to send someone to pick him up. A blue window of the system appears, where it is written that the dragon soaring at 10,000 miles transferred 200,000 to his account. The main character says how honest he is. He didn't even check the things, but already transferred the money. He pays attention to the girl in red clothes. She has a worried expression on her face. The main character smiles and says that he was curious about everything. Everyone says that the NPCs in Eternity are incredibly realistic. The girl in extremely dressed trembles and tells the main character not to come near, and then asks him what he wants. The main character approaches her with an angry expression on his face. A red system notification appears with information that the protagonist's actions will be considered brutal behavior on the Tianheng continent, and if he engages in violent actions, a record will be left in the system and all factions will begin to hunt him. The protagonist has a surprised expression on his face. With a dissatisfied expression on his face, he thought that it was expected. The developers do not allow players to do something disgusting in the game, almost as he thought. The main character tells the lady that she saw everything that happened today, and then asks her to convey his message to the Light faction. He asks her to tell them that he, the Winter River, will be waiting for them in the City of Darkness, and anyone who does not come is a coward. The main character looks at the girl from behind and says that it's time to go back and report everything to the teacher. There is a blue light in the building. The Necromancer stands opposite the protagonist and asks him what he needs now. The main character asks the teacher if he could get another gift sphere. The Necromancer materializes the sphere and says sure. A system notification appears congratulating you on completing the Destroy the Enemy Camp mission. Reward, experience plus 200,000, rank C item gift sphere. The main character squeezes the sphere and says that he uses the gift sphere on the rock armor. The main character puts on new armor. A red system window appears with information about the protagonist's character at level 28. His HP is 50,220, attack is 1245 to 1308, defense is 331-374, reputation is 19,500, and luck is 1. According to the new system notification, the protagonist's strength meets the requirements and the power rating in the Dark faction is now open. The main character wondered if this was a rating of power in the faction. A system window appears with a frame where the rating of the power of the Dark faction is written in places from 1 to 10. In the first place is the Beast of Space and Time, Potter; in the second the Catastrophe Star, Alec; in the third the Ocean Devourer, Barlow; in the fourth the Fallen Angel, Sarah; on the fifth Lotus of the Fire Dance, Nico; on the sixth Beast of War, Harry; on the seventh Wind of Destruction, Ralph; on the eighth Ruler of Souls, Gal; on the ninth Evil Dragon, Atticus; on the 10th Vicious Curse, Lore. The main character asks the system to find the rank of Winter River. The protagonist has rank 99,999,955. Drops of sweat run down the protagonist's face and he says that it's very good. This suggests that the number of characters in the Dark faction capable of defeating him does not exceed hundreds of millions. Danielle, with glowing blue eyes and a smile on her face, says that it seems that the main character already knows the forbidden names of demonic gods, and although the top 10 demonic gods are powerful and rarely meet their equals on the Tianheng continent, the main character should not downplay his achievements, because in the future he will also probably have a chance to get into this top 10. The main character asks if it's just because he's a dark swordsman. The Necromancer puts his hands forward and says that this is exactly so. The previous dark swordsman was also one of the 10 demonic gods, whose name sounded throughout the world. The main character asks the Necromancer how he died. The Necromancer replies that be that as it may, he doesn't need to think about it yet and he will find out in the future. Danielle says that the protagonist's plan is indeed extremely effective, and at the moment more than 200,000 adventurers have joined the ranks of the defense under the leadership of Cantor and will help them when the battle for the city begins. The main character says, of course, with a joyful expression on his face. He thought that since the Light faction represents justice, it would not help factions like theirs, but players tend to act in accordance with their desires and do not complain about the lack of a sense of justice, so they can neglect it. He adds that moral standards do not restrain them at all. The Necromancer with a smile on his face tells the main character that at this rate, if they don't show up, they really have a chance to save the City of Darkness. The main character, with a surprised expression on his face, asks the teacher what he means by saying they. The Necromancer tells the protagonist that he understood the essence, and then asks him why he is making a fool of himself. The main character, with a surprised expression on his face, thought that it looked like the main problem was still in the plot lines. The Necromancer leaves and tells the protagonist that he shouldn't think too much about it, because his current strength is not enough for this and only by becoming more powerful will he be able to solve the problem. He adds that the basis of the army of the City of Darkness is still made up of skeleton warriors, and the main character is stronger than them and is able to teach them some combat techniques. The system asks the protagonist if he accepts the task Skeleton Warrior Training with difficulty C description. The skeleton warriors themselves have some power, but this is still not enough in the face of the elite of the Light faction. We need to train them to become stronger. Requirements: you need to teach the skeleton warriors new skills. Required quantity: 0 out of 5,000. The protagonist accepts the task. Against the background of a high-rise building, clouds fly across the sky. The main character looks at the phone with the desire to order food, but notices something. He called his friend and offers him some spicy soup, and then says that he is treating him. Wang Kai asks the protagonist what happened this morning. The main character asks his friend what he is talking about, and then says that everything in his game is a mess right now, so maybe he can help. The friend tells the main character that it was he who had some problems. The main character replies that he has decided everything. Wang Kai touches the bowl of food and asks the main character what level he is now. The protagonist replies that it's about 20-something. The protagonist's friend, with a shocked expression on his face, screams and asks the protagonist if he is serious and if he is at the top of the leaderboard. The main character asks his friend what level he is, and Wang Kai replies that he is 19th and he is in position 39 in the ranking and is a triumphant king, and then asks the main character what his nickname is. The protagonist, with a serious expression on his face, tells his friend that he will tell him his nickname, but asks not to tell anyone else about it. Wang Kai asks with concern on his face if he is bad at keeping secrets. The main character with a serious expression on his face says that in fact he is the Winter River. The friend eats noodles and with an indifferent expression on his face tells the protagonist that this is how he turns out to be the Winter River. He spits out the noodles with a surprised look on his face. He looks at the main character and thought that now everything is falling into place. Wang Kai asks the protagonist if he said this seriously. He touches his temple with his finger and says that since the protagonist is Winter Rick, it is better not to tell anyone about his game ID so as not to get unwanted problems. He adds that the protagonist can be calm and he didn't hear anything now. The main character with a smile on his face tells his friend that he believes him. The windows in the building glow blue. A system notification appears in front of the protagonist with information that the adventurers' support for the City of Darkness has provoked high-ranking members of the Light faction, and it was decided to launch the offensive 4 days earlier. The main character, with a frightened expression on his face, thought that 4 days earlier is tomorrow. A drop of sweat runs down his face and he asks if it is possible to reschedule a game event with a set date. And is it true that, as stated in the server launch announcement, each NPC has their own feelings and their own storyline, thanks to which they can trigger changes to a seemingly static history. He adds that he really thinks about it too much and it's just that the developers don't want players to side with the Dark faction, which is why they deliberately moved the event. Skeletons with spears hold spears in their hands. The protagonist approaches them and they call him Sir. The protagonist tells the skeletons that the ruler ordered him to train them in the hope that they will learn new abilities. He adds that they need to call here all the skeleton warriors that are nearby. Many skeletons gathered around the protagonist. He looks at them and thinks how he can teach them. A system notification appears informing you that the main character can show his active skills to the skeleton warriors for training. Note: skeleton warriors have limited potential and are not able to reproduce skills perfectly. The protagonist can train more than one per week. The main character rests his chin and thinks about the method of observation. The protagonist's eyes glow purple and he thought he understood. The main character brings his fist to his mouth and coughs, and then asks the skeletons to look carefully here, because today he will demonstrate to them an extremely effective technique. The protagonist jumps high. He kicks the ground and purple energy comes out of it. He moved his hand to the side and said that the main thing in this technique is to step on the enemy, and when meeting opponents, in particular with representatives of the light faction, they will have to trample their faces with special force and crush them. The main character smiles and thought that for some reason it seems like in tomorrow's skirmish a pack of skeleton warriors will use a technique like devils trampling against the adventurers. The skeleton asks the protagonist if he could show it again because he just missed everything. The main character replies that of course and kicks the ground again. A system notification appears with information that, with the instructions of the protagonist, 13 skeleton warriors have mastered the D-rank skill trampling people. Skeletons are enveloped in a blue aura. Another system notification appears with the instructions of the main character. 3 skeleton warriors have mastered the C-rank skill crushing. Winter River thought that skeleton warriors differ in their understanding, so they learn different ranks of the skill, but the effects are in some ways similar to devil trampling, although much weaker. He tells the skeletons to remember that this move should not be their main strategy and should only be used when their health reaches a critical level, and then they need to activate it again and again, and once they are ready, there is no need to hold back. A system notification appears with the information that, with the instructions of the protagonist, 22 skeleton warriors have adopted human trampling as their main combat technique, increasing the frequency of its use. The main character points his finger at the skeleton and says what exactly, keep it up, and then adds that in the upcoming battle they must distinguish themselves and show the fools of the light faction their power. The gray sky rises above the house. A blue system window appears, where it is written that with the instructions of the protagonist, 45 skeleton warriors have mastered the D-rank skill trampling people. A system notification appears congratulating the protagonist for completing the skeleton warrior training mission. The main character runs through the city and exclaims that the mission is completed, and then says that he needs to find out what the teacher will give him. The main character tells the teacher, who is sitting in the gazebo, that he has completed the task. Danielle smiles and says that given that the light faction is attacking tomorrow, he assumed that the protagonist would handle it today. A purple system notification appears congratulating the main character for completing the mission skeleton warrior training. Reward, mysterious item moon shard. The main character thought what kind of moon fragment it was. A system window appears with information about a moon shard of unknown rank. Description: a mysterious fragment containing immeasurable power. Effect: grants the wearer one-time protection from lethal damage. Recharge: 1 month. A glowing moon fragment hovers above the hands of the protagonist, and he thought that this item, which protects the wearer from a fatal blow, turned out to be a reward for a standard C-rank task. The Necromancer tells the main character that his rank is unknown, which is why he is available on an easy mission. The main character smiles and tells the teacher that he is grateful to him. Danielle says that fate is such a mysterious concept. He looks at the protagonist and says that initially he used the powers of the moon shard to avoid powerful enemies, and at one point the charging failed, but he met the protagonist. He adds that this gave them a chance, and he unexpectedly gained a student. The main character asks the teacher why he gives it to him. The Necromancer puts his hand on the protagonist's shoulder and says that his mission is completed, and death is destined. And rather than allow the imposters of the light faction to take the moon fragment, he would prefer to give it to him. He adds that they will skip the sentimental chatter, and then adds that the protagonist must remember his words that he must live long enough in this world, and their paths will cross again. The main character asks the teacher who he really is. The Necromancer leaves and says that his answer will remain the same. When the protagonist becomes powerful enough, the truth will be revealed to him. The Necromancer turns around and his eyes glow blue, and then he tells the protagonist to keep in mind that tomorrow his first priority will be to preserve himself. A drop of sweat runs down the protagonist's cheek. The main character disappears and says that it is already late, and in order to be ready for tomorrow's siege at 10 a.m., he should go to bed soon. 9 hours 30 minutes. The sun illuminates a multi-story residential building. The main character is holding a helmet in his hands. He puts the helmet on his head and says, "Let the battle begin." The main character appears among many soldiers. He looks around and says that there is a whole crowd here. A system notification appears with information that the main mission Defense the City of Darkness will begin at exactly 10 o'clock. Another notification appears, which says that the mission Cause Confusion is now active, and if the protagonist does not take first place in the rating table for the city's defense, he will lose the protection of the demonic gods. According to another notification from the system, the protagonist was appointed the boss of the third line of defense of the city from the Light faction, and absence from the post will lead to the loss of 10 levels and a decrease in all characteristics by 100. The protagonist, with a worried expression on his face, thought that, apparently, because he proposed to summon players on defense were given such strong fines. A guy with brown hair points his finger at the protagonist and exclaims that Winter River has logged in. Many players look at the protagonist. One of them shouts that he finally looked at the big shot in person and he doesn't look so scary yet. Another player asks if the protagonist cares that 1 billion players from all over the server want to finish him off. One of the players asks the protagonist for an autograph. One of the players asks the protagonist what level he is now, and then adds that he himself is 18 and doesn't even see his character panel. The main character pushes the players away and apologetically asks them to let him through. He runs and thought that he was the boss of the third line. He must first check what was happening on the walls. The main character turns to his teacher. The protagonist receives a system notification stating that the event has officially begun. According to the second notice, the protagonist should not enter the battle ahead of time since he is a silver rank boss. The protagonist sees many soldiers running towards the city. One of the running players laughs. A notification appears that the level 20 bronze rank boss, Challenger Ziazuo, is leading the first wave of Light faction players into the siege. A man in armor and with a mace in his hands shouts and asks what kind of city of darkness this is, and then says that now is the time to return the city of light. He commands the players to go on the attack and destroy the fools who betrayed the Light faction along with these disgusting skeletons. A system window appears with information about the level 20 applicant Ziazuo. He has 80,000 HP, 200-350 attack, 120-150 defense, and also has the skills Mighty Strike and Fury. Danielle puts her hand forward and commands the fight to begin. The gates of the City of Darkness are opening. Two armies are running towards each other. Skeletons laugh and jump on enemies. Skeleton warriors use the trample people skill and hit players on the heads. One of the players asks what kind of skill this is. One of the skeletons pinned a player to the ground, and the other suddenly attacked another player from behind. The guy in plate armor says that there is a rule, don't hit him in the face. A girl with black hair and a sword in her hands exclaims that these skeletons are so strong and thank God she is on the defensive. A muscular man with a goatee says that this is hilarious, you need to write it down so you can watch it again 10 times. Danielle looks at the protagonist with a smile on his face and thought that this boy was truly his best student. After all, he came up with such an insidious trick. The main character smiles maliciously. The red-haired guy runs away from the skeletons and shouts that he is out of here, and behind him the skeleton kicks the player in the head. One of the players shouts that he and his friends farmed these skeleton warriors before and they were never such evil spirits. Ziazuo maces the skeleton and decapitates it. He commands the defenders to quickly take these positions. The guy with the axe tries to defend himself, but the guy in the mask cuts the axe into 2 parts. The main character opens a system window. He sees the ranking of defenders, where Sleepless is in first place with 23 points, Lace Lover is in second with 20 points, Beautiful as Flowers is in third with 19 points, and Grim Reaper is in fourth with 5 points. The main character thought that the battle had just begun. The Storm Legion had quite a lot of HP, so they wouldn't be farmed quickly. He adds that apparently adventurers attacking a city earn points for defeating the defenders. The main character, with a serious expression on his face, thought that he needed to do something just in case. The main character puts his hand towards the guy with the bow and asks if he has a spare weapon. The guy replies that there is one thing, but the protagonist is a warrior, and a bow will not help him. The main character with a smile on his face tells him not to worry and asks him to just give these old things and a quiver with 10 arrows, and he will give 10 silver coins for them. The guy hands the protagonist a bow. According to the system information window, this is a regular rank wooden bow with an attack of 6-8 and requires level 5. Description: a bow made by a carpenter, and the fact that it shoots is already a miracle. The main character takes the wooden bow. A system notification appears, which says that due to the change of weapon, the attack power has dropped to 842. The protagonist pulls the bowstring. A system window appears with information about the protagonist. He has 50,220 HP, 842 attack, 331-374 defense, as well as 19,500 reputation and 1 luck. The protagonist hits a player wearing a plate breastplate and deals 7768 damage. According to the system notification, the protagonist received 1 point for defeating the adventurer. One of the players, with concern on his face, says that the deputy leader was killed, and he is a warrior with high level 20 defense. The archer from whom the protagonist took the bow looks at the protagonist and thought that it was just an ordinary old bow, and even he, a ranged combat specialist, could not inflict so much damage. The main character with a smile on his face says that this is not bad. He pulls the string and says keep it up. The arrow flies straight at the enemy. It hits a warrior with a spear and shield, dealing 9968 damage. The protagonist receives 1 point for defeating an adventurer. The archer exclaims that the main character killed a level 21 tank with 1 shot, and with perfect accuracy. He asks if you join the dark faction, you really become that strong. The main character smiles smugly and thought that it looks like he is talented not only with a sword, but also with a bow. The main character loads 3 arrows at once and says that maybe he should be called not the Winter River, but Reincarnation of Liubu. The main character hits the skeleton with an arrow and for this he was deducted 1 point. He hits the player on the defensive side in the back and loses another point. He hits another skeleton in the head and again loses a point. Daniel, with confusion on his face, wondered if this guy was hitting his own people. The main character looks at what is happening with concern on his face. The Necromancer calls the main character the Flying General and adds that if he continues to shoot like this, then his entire army will beg for his mercy. The main character pulls the bowstring and thought it was better not to complicate things, so he will aim where there are many enemies. In 20 minutes, Liu Bu, with 1 health, holds onto his mace. He opens his mouth wide and talks about the City of Light. The challenger's body disappears and the players try to run towards it as quickly as possible. One of them shouts that they need to quickly grab his things. A blue system notification appears informing you that player Sleepless has successfully defeated challenger Ziazuo, and he receives 25 additional points. According to the ranking table, the first place is occupied by Sleepless with 129 points. The second is Beautiful as Flowers with 68 points. The third is The Dragon and Nature with 57 points, and the protagonist is fourth with 51 points. The main character says that he only has 51 points. The competition is still quite tough, especially for first place, because there the player has almost twice as many points as the second place. A system window appears with information that the Thunder Legion, led by the level 25 bronze rank boss Angus Thunderaxe, will send a second wave into the siege in 5 minutes. A man with a beard and a horned helmet holds an axe in one hand and a shield in the other.